Want to play chess online or learn how to improve? Join us at the #1 chess destination in the world, chess.com. With hundreds of thousands of people playing at any moment, you'll quickly find a game with someone at your level, whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster. You can play games at any pace against friends, other members, or one of our many computer personalities. Chess.com makes improving fun and easy. Sharpen your game with tactics puzzles and enhance your strategy with our videos and lessons by top masters. Learn from your own games with Chess.com's easy-to-use analysis tool. Regardless of your skill level, Chess.com has all you need to take your game to the next level. Chess.com is your go-to source for chess news, live coverage of tournaments, events, and everything in between. Experience Chess.com anytime and anywhere, whether you're at home on your computer or on the go with our mobile apps. Signing up is free and easy, so what are you waiting for? Join Chess.com today.
Welcome everyone, this is FIDE Grand Prix 2022, last leg, and we do have the finals. And we do have final 4 players competing for the best prize. I am honored to be joined by Grandmaster Dania Naroditsky. Welcome Dania at the show.
Ketty, good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here. I've been watching very eagerly and with enthusiasm. I thought you and Robert have done a tremendous job. I have very big shoes to fill. And I will do my very best.
Thank you very much, Dania. We just have a few players now for you left, and we also have the players who are gonna play at the candidates tournament. We're gonna talk about this later, but for today, Nakamura gonna face Mamediyarov, and Wesley will face Amin Tabatabai. So this is our 2 matches. We're gonna have 2 games. They will play with one color. They will switch the color tomorrow. And in case if there is a draw and tie, they're gonna play also the tie breaks. So final 2 games, not too much of the games in action, but Dania, this will not be boring for us, as Mamediyarov at the interview said that he missed to play against Hikaru Nakamura. So I'm very much looking forward to this match. What are your thoughts about these 2 games?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to point out, and maybe we can pull up the Grand Prix leaderboard, the points total. Hikaru's already made the candidates, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to try. And 7 points from this tournament at a minimum will put him at 20, and nobody can catch him. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't care about the match. Hikaru and doesn't care usually doesn't go in the same sentence. Well, sometimes it does, but there's a lot of money on the line. There's pride, and as you said, Shakhriyar has a chip on his shoulder. And the other matchup between Wesley and Amin, that is not a matchup that we see every day. Amin is, this is one of his first tastes of Super GM tournaments, and he has acquitted himself incredibly. And he's going to be doing everything he can to stay in this tournament. If Amin can win this entire thing, that would be the achievement of a lifetime for him.
Indeed, he's already having the best tournament of his career, I believe, as he is now at the semifinals. Dania, let's take a look at the formats and then later at the prizes too. So we do have 3 tournaments overall and 16 players in each tournament. They are were divided in 4 groups, and now we just have final 2 groups at the Grand Prix. And let's take a look at the prizes. What is the money that these players are going for?
24,000 euros for top spot for the winner. And this is why, what you're looking at here is why Hikaru isn't just going to say, hey, I made the candidates, I don't care about these matches. I'm pretty sure that all of these players care about 12,000 euros. So very generous prizes. There's a lot on the line. And the stage is really set. Now, remember, you can always go to the guide at go.chess.com/FIDEGP 2022, all one link for more information to refresh your memory on the format. And please do not forget to vote on the results of today's games. Go to chess.com/events, navigate to the tournament, select a game, click vote, and guess the results. Voting ends after the 10th move of each game, so do not procrastinate. You know the drill. Make sure to put in your vote, Ketty.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna do this myself too right now. And Dania, I cannot wait to see the first moves, and so excited to see these 2 matchups. Hikaru Nakamura gonna be fire on the board, and then Tabatabai. And so this is so interesting. Maybe they even have not played so much of the games yet, as Tabatabai is so young player. He just joined the elite players, and Wesley is well experienced and has been in chess competitions for so long. So can't wait to start the games. And we're going now to take our very short break and coming back right before the first move. So guys, don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone. This is FIDE Grand Prix semifinals, and we do have final two games starting very soon. Dania, I see that it is 3 p.m. Central European time. Players are now in Berlin one more time, and we are expecting the moves to be played now. Dania, yesterday, all of the games have been played 1d4. all of these games played. We even see the tiebreaks went to the blitz format, and even there was one d4. So what do you think? Is Shahriar going to play one d4 with white pieces, or he's just e4 player and he's going to do his stuff?
Well, Shah can play anything, d4, e4, c4. But the thing about playing e4 against Hikaru is you have to face the Berlin. And, there are things that are less desirable in life, like going to the dentist, for example, or, standing in line at airport security. But I would say playing a Berlin against Hikaru is probably top 5 undesirable experiences. So something tells me that Shahriar might want to avoid that and play d4. But, it's very hard to predict. And, he's very much in the modern tradition. He also can play e4, d4. These top players, they play everything. So, it's very hard to judge what they'll play based on their repertoire, because their repertoire is so extensive.
It is. And Danny, I really want to see this game going to the tie breaks, because just imagine low time on the clock, a lot of sacrifices and pieces flying over the board. This is going to be so exciting. But before that, we're going to have 2 classical games. Do you think that these matches will be decided here at the classical format, or we might have tiebreakers later in 2 days?
Yeah, I think, Wesley is definitely hoping to strike quickly. I think he doesn't want to get this into a tiebreaker. But Nakamura obviously doesn't mind a rapid tiebreaker. So I think we're going to see very solid play from Hikaru. We're not going to see anything insane. If somebody came to him and said, okay, you can draw the next 2 games, he would take them up on their offer. Absolutely. So he's going to toss the ball into Shahriar's court, and, we'll see to what degree Shahriar wants to sharpen up the game as opposed to, playing something relatively solid.
Yeah, that's right, Tanya. Yesterday, Hikaru played Tattoo Tuesday. And before that, he was streaming as well. And he's at very, very important competition. How he's managing to divide his time and the energy that he can still do anything and come next day on the chessboard and play 5 hours classical game. What do you think? What is his strength? How he can do this?
It's honestly pretty crazy. It's unprecedented. I remember not even playing a single game of Blitz during a tournament. This is not just a tournament. This is a qualifier for the candidates. And, on the one hand, somebody could look at this and scoff and say, Hikaru's attention is divided and he doesn't care. But I think it's the opposite. I think Hikaru's stream and his community gives him a lot of confidence, and his fans give him a lot of confidence. So Title Tuesday, obviously that takes a little bit of energy, but he gets a lot of confidence and a lot of enthusiasm and energy from his community. So it's a very unique situation, and whatever Hikaru is doing, it's working. So he's just going to keep on doing it until and ride off into the sunset. We'll see how far he can take it.
That's right, Tanya. Like, if anyone else does that, it very likely will not work. But he does this, and it's just working perfectly well. And he won the first Grand Prix, and now he is in the semifinals. And we're gonna see what's gonna happen. And do you know? Oh, you know better than. Oh, by the way, we have games already.
We have. Yeah, I think Hikaru's game has begun. Yes, it's just Hikaru's game that has begun for now, and we have a Petrov, a symmetrical Petrov. I think we're getting our answer. And actually, Hikaru with the white pieces in game 1. Or is this?
Maybe they're testing.
Yeah, I don't think this is the actual game. I don't know. Somehow, I don't know if either of them would be too inclined to play this kind of system with the white pieces.
Maybe this is a test. So I will go and ask you what I wanted. Oh no, it's a real game.
Yeah, it's a real game. It's it's a real game, but we'll see if it's a test. We're gonna go on a very quick break, Ketty, just to figure this out. The games are about to begin. We'll be bringing you the relay in just a couple of moments, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. So the games has started already. Those are the real games, and now we cannot wait to dive in it. Dania, what is happening in these games?
So first of all, just to clarify, we got initially the wrong information on our end, but Hikaru is white in game one, and Wesley So is also white. So Hikaru isn't black; he is white in game one and black in game two. And this is the real position. So Hikaru playing 1e4, Shakirar responding with a Petrov, knight f6. And I think Hikaru is kind of revealing his intentions here pretty early. In this position, the main move is d4. That's what we're accustomed to seeing, Ketty. But Hikaru going for an old line that forces an immediate endgame, queen e2. Now, does that win the knight? No, it doesn't, because of queen e7. The knight is chased away. The queens are traded, and a very symmetrical, very drawish endgame arises as a result.
Wow. So we know what Hikaru wants. He wants to go to the tiebreakers, where there will be low time on the clock, and he feels very confident to play rapid and blitz games. And Shaki is also happy with that, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think Shakirar would necessarily mind a rapid tiebreaker, because he's an incredibly strong rapid player. So it just might be the case that, that these players are kind of tired of playing the classical time control. But I would caution against assuming that this game would end quickly. There is a chance that things become a little bit unbalanced. I mean, this line isn't only played in order to make a draw, but I think the way Hikaru is playing it, bishop back to d2, his top priority is just to play very solidly. There's no way Shakirar either of them really should lose this position.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So then we can jump to the next game, Wesley So, Tabatabai, and check it out, what is happening in here.
Ooh, so we have a Queen's Gambit declined and a Carlsbad structure. So what happened is they went through the Nimzo Indian move order. Then, going d5, transposing into a Queen's Gambit decline, Wesley capturing it. Now, a lot of top players have been playing knight takes d5 here recently, but going for the traditional e takes d5. And this is known as the Carlsbad structure. And the main move here is bishop e7, Ketty. Bishop e6 by Amin is a modern treatment of the position where the dark squared bishop actually comes out to d6. Wesley playing an early f3 to prepare e4. So very creative play by both sides, c5, c4, and we get this very interesting imbalance. Ketty, generally what happens here is Wesley goes b3, white goes for e4, black goes for queenside counterplay, but it looks like Wesley is still in his preparation.
That's right. Now b3 has been played, and black cannot play b5 as this pawn is under attack two ways, and black can only guard one way. So white will capture the pawn on b5 by the knight, attack the bishop, and will have the extra pawn. So black is pretty much forced here to trade the pawns, or to play rook c8, for instance, and bring the rook on the open file.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the question. I'll just show you. b5 would be ideal, but unfortunately that doesn't work. It just gives up a pawn. Now, the downside of c takes b3, and you're right, just played rook c8. C takes b3 would have allowed white's queen to jump onto b3, attack the b7 pawn. Wesley immediately responding with rook a b1. Ketty, that must be a disconcerting sensation for Amin to be walking into Wesley's prep this deep in the game. It's move 17.
Oh, it's move 17 already. And so Wesley is blitzing out. He has 4 minutes increment on the clock. Tabatabai also keeps the speed here, but he spent more time to figure out how to respond here against Wesley's preparation. And Dania, it's very hard to know that you are at your opponent's lines. He has to switch something here, maybe.
I don't know exactly. There's no question in my mind that white is contending for an advantage here. The threat is b takes c4 and rook takes b7. So black can address this in a variety of ways. One way to do it is knight b6. The idea being to meet bc with knight c4, counterattacking white's biggest weakness, which is that e3 pawn. Now, after knight b6, Wesley is under no obligation to play PC. And a really interesting move here would be b4. Now, on the one hand, you might say, well, why is White leaving, this protected passer without any pressure? But on the other hand, it leaves the knight in the dust. Now the knight cannot access c4, and White is ready to disrupt and break down Black's pawn chain with e3, e4. So I think White is for choice here. Clearly, very deep preparation by Wesley.
Yeah, that's right, Dania. And also after knight b6, there is this tricky move a5.
Yep.
If you first try to kick this knight from b6, but Black has moved c takes b3, targeting the queen. Now queen has to take this, or rook has to take this, and then knight jumps to,
no, that's not, that's even worse.
Knight jumps to c4, and now b7 pawn is hanging, but who cares about the pawn? Look at this knight d2 fork, knight e3. So this can be even a good initiative. So this is quite unnecessary complication here for White, but b4 instead of a5 is indeed the move that White would love to play, would love to close the queen side for now and open up the center, and then start the game to go to the king side.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, taking some time. It doesn't appear that objectively White's advantage is huge or anything like that, but this is what Wesley does. He finds these nasty lines, and then he forces you to spend a lot of time. This is right up his alley. He loves these kinds of positions.
Yeah, we saw his games yesterday, 2 games where we thought it was completely equal, nothing too special, and then out of nowhere he put it so much pressure on Sam's position that he won the game really nicely. So Tabatabai is taking a lot of time here. He's down to 28 minutes. Is he already struggling, Dania?
I think he's definitely out of his prep. There's no question that Wesley is still in his prep, and Amin is out of his prep. And that's a big moment when you're playing somebody like Wesley. You don't want to get out prepared. And Amin realizes that, if he doesn't play accurately here, this is where he can slip into a really bad position. So he's got alternatives. Knight b6 we looked at. There's also the move bishop b4 with a pretty similar idea. If White takes on c4, then Black takes with the rook and intercepts the White rook's connection to the b7 pawn. But even here, after something like queen d3, White is ready to play e4, and it's not entirely clear, the Black's queenside pieces are all that well placed. So, and the engine does assign a slight advantage to White here as well.
Yeah, Dania, and what happens if Black starts to push the pawn in the center, e5, or just wait a little bit, and then if White plays e4, then to blow the center with e5?
Just fire on board.
Yeah.
Just blow everything up. No, that's a really interesting idea, because that would essentially force White's hand. BC, rook c4, rook takes b7. And I would be very scared of going for this as White if I wasn't prepared. I mean, e takes d4, e takes d4. There's a check on e3, which I guess doesn't give anything because of bishop f2. There's also queen c8 trying to intensify the pressure on the knight. Also, clearly not very good, just because of something like rook b3 maybe.
Yeah, there's also Daniel some moves like queen h5 there to attack the bishop on h2 pawn, and then open up the c8 square for another rook to pin the knight on c3. There are some possibilities here.
Yeah, a lot of promise here for Black. Unfortunately, it looks like, as you can see from the eval bar, none of these lines that we're showing are quite satisfactory from an objective standpoint. So a lot to think about here for Tabatabai. Shall we check into our other game and see how that one was proceeding?
Absolutely. Look at this. So, Dania, we ask when we have such a position if we can find 10 differences in the position. Right. We have to find that.
Jeez, I mean, if Shakir plays bishop d7 here, that would be hilarious. I feel like it depends on whether, what his sense of humor is. I wouldn't play bishop d7 you know, if I was forced to play objectively, but maybe he won't be able to resist the temptation.
Yeah, that's right. What's the decision of both players to push the C pawns forward and give this outpost of d4 and d5 to the opponent?
Yeah, so Shakira started it. He played c5 first, and Hikaru is saying, well, I like that idea. I'm going to go c4. Yeah, Black is trying to clamp down on the center. And he's not worried about the d5 square being weak because it's protected by the knight, and you can always push your pawn to d5. So it's not such a big positional risk. And there just isn't much to say about this position. I think Shakira should probably castle, which is the most flexible move. It delays the development of the light squared bishop, which could go out to g4, could go out to f5. I mean, the position is completely equal. I mean, this one should be a draw. There's just very little to, you know, the sides are so similar here that these positions rarely end up with something too enterprising.
Yeah, Dania, maybe we do have more interesting statistics of these two players. Right below your video, there is head-to-head statistics of Hikaru and Mamedyarov, and they have played over 70 games. That's a lot. And we do have here Hikaru winning 6 games and Mamedyarov winning 5 games in classical chess. They have made 9 draws. And in rapids, we see that Hikaru is a bit favored as he had won 9 games and Shak has won 6 games. And in blitz, if all of this goes to the blitz, then we can see that Hikaru is a clear leader there, 20 wins against 4 of Shahriar. So, yeah.
That's pretty ridiculous. I mean, the difference between the classical and blitz, you know, they're pretty evenly matched in classical. Then you can see, like, yeah, Hikaru has a bit of an edge in rapid, and boom, in the blitz, he's 20 wins and 4 losses. Just shows you the extent of Hikaru's blitz dominance, because Shakira is no slouch in blitz. He's one of the strongest players in the world in his own right. So to beat somebody like that 24 is unbelievable. Now we know why Hikaru is going for the rapid playoffs. He actually wants this to get into the blitz. He wants 2 more draws after these 2 initial draws.
He has a good reason. He still remembers probably all those games that he won. But why Shakira is following him?
Why is he, you know, acceding to his, you know, accepting the flow of the game, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think Shakira also has the black pieces here. I think tomorrow, assuming this game ends in a draw, which is not a certainty by any means, I think Shakira will make a very big push tomorrow to win the game with white. But Hikaru, he trusts his black repertoire. I mean, it's so solid. Nobody can seem to get, you know, anything against Hikaru with white. When Hikaru chooses to play solidly, you might remember he played a King's Indian against Oparin, and you know, Oparin was winning. But when Hikaru wants to make a draw, I mean, with either color, it's almost impossible to stop him, which is a pretty scary thought.
Right. Okay, a very interesting situation. And Dania, in the other game, we have a move now, and this is bishop b4. Tabatabai made this decision to bring the bishop on b4 and try to pin the knight on c file.
So we talked briefly about this move. Wesley has not responded immediately, so that's a pretty encouraging sign for Amin. And once again, the idea is that after bc, rook takes c4, white is unable to capture on b7. And black also exerts a lot of pressure on the knight on c3. So we were discussing this line with queen d3.
Right.
And, you know, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what black should do here. I think e5 e5 doesn't work, because if knight takes d5 and the rook falls, so that's impossible. Knight b6, maybe something like this. Very strange position, Ketty. It's hard hard to get a handle on what's going on here. Bishop e1 apparently is a strong move here. Look at this line, knight e4, knight d5.
Oh, wow.
That's a cool idea. Now the bishop hangs and the rook hangs. After ed, bishop e4, rook f7. Now white pushes e4. And now white gets a huge initiative in the center.
And Daniel, this can be analyzed by Wesley. So all of these, even more moves. If he plays so fast at this point, he might have seen this before already. Yeah,
maybe he's trying to remember his preparation. You never know nowadays. You can never say with certainty that they're out of their preparation, because it might always be, oh, they're just trying to remember, what they analyzed late at night 3 weeks ago in some hotel room. Was it bishop e1 now, or is it bishop e1 on the next move? Oh, as I say that, he plays bishop e1 and he plays it now.
Wow. So he goes now, and we were looking this at after b takes c4. What is the difference here, and why he chose to play now and not?
Well, I think that the difference is that if black is the one to take on b3, white actually either queen b3 or rook b3 is beneficial to white. I like queen takes b3 because after rook c4, I think white is ready to play e4, and with the queen being out of the pin, this already looks pretty unappetizing for black. White threatens e takes d5 and knight takes d5, by the way. So let's make a random move. In fact, knight takes d5 is even stronger here, because that bishop on e1 is an incredible piece. It's x-raying the black bishop. So after ed5, bishop b4, white's up a pawn and just steamrolling black in the center.
Oh, that's very good idea here. So instead of rook c4, Tanya, maybe a5 can be played there to guard the bishop in this way.
Right, a5 would prevent knight takes d5 ideas. Conversely, would allow knight b5, and now white threatens to take on b4 and fork the queen and the rook. Also, this knight is just really, really good. But black can go rook c6 here. I don't think this is terrible for black, but I don't think this is particularly appetizing either. Let's say white takes on c4. You're not really going to take with a pawn, right, and allow e4. So you're going to have to waste a move, and then I play queen b3. And this is a familiar, we just looked at a similar position. White threatens e4. So this is a great move by Wesley. Man, he's just so good at creating problems out of nowhere.
Yeah, bishop e1 now, and he makes so much threats. This is so non-opening, right? Queen's Gambit declined. You don't see much of the new things. To me, this structure is just new. I have never seen something like this before. And Dania, who changed? Was it Wesley who changed this direction of the Queen's Gambit declined positions?
Well, first of all, I would point out that the Carlsbad, I think, is very underrated. It's not considered the main line. Of course, bishop g5 here, just to rewind, is the most popular move. And there was a time when everybody was playing this other line, bishop f4, and it was like this was the second coming of this is like what everybody's playing. But white still didn't prove anything in these positions, and somehow the Carlsbad got thrown a little bit under the bus, but it's never been refuted or anything like that. And this structure is, relatively speaking, not as well studied. And then you have another change of the structure with Amin pushing that pawn down to c4 and Wesley trading on e6, which also you don't see every day. So now you get this weird thing going where black has his pawn chain, but e4 becomes very strong. So Ketty, that's a great point. When the pawn structure is changed, even these incredibly experienced and well-prepared players can struggle, because when the structure is different, there are different ideas and you might not be as familiar with them. And it looks like Wesley's done a great job familiarizing himself with this new structure. And I mean, maybe not so much.
Yeah, Dania, you need to spend more time to understand what are the plans, what are the threats. And now Amin is going all these lines now, e4, knight d5, b takes c4, and it's gonna cost him some time and also energy, because when you are working so hard in the position at the opening, then you are getting so tired for the end games. So it's gonna get it's gonna affect the other part of the game too. So that's why it's so important to be well prepared in the opening. And Wesley shows that he was ready for this one.
He was ready, and this reminds me of. So I've played Wesley, 6 or 7 times by now, and I have a terrible score against him. And the very
terrible,
first,
Dania?
Well, I think I've never beaten him in a classical game. I drew our most recent game at the US Championship, but our very first game, I was an IM and he was 2650. And, I was white. We played a Karukan. We went into an end game. I thought, okay, this is going to be a quick draw. And then 10 moves later, I look at the position and I'm like, wait a second, I'm totally lost. And this same thing happened a couple of years later. I was already a GM and Wesley was already a super GM. We're playing a game. Wesley has white. He just is trading all of the pieces right out of the opening. Like, what is he doing? Is he not feeling well? Does he want a quick draw? So he's trading all the pieces. We get into an end game. I'm like, this has to be a draw. There's no way I'm losing this. There's no way to make progress. And then I had just one weak square, and somehow Wesley got his knight around to that square, and you know where he goes from there. He causes a little bit of problems, then all of a sudden I lose a pawn, and before I knew it, I lost the game. So he's honestly just a magician.
Wow. And he's, according to this, what you said, he's also very strong in the end games, right? It's so important to be good at the end game and have huge knowledge of the end game.
He's clinical in the end game. Okay, so Amina's thinking maybe we can briefly go back to the bird's eye view of the player of the 2 games. And Keri, yes. Rook fe1 by Hikaru.
Yeah, earlier Mamadiro played castle and he keeps his bishop on stage, so he's waiting a little bit of Hikaru's reaction, where if he avoids this bishop g4 by h3, he will develop it somewhere else. But Hikaru said, okay, I'll play rook to e1 now, and maybe he wants to play next move bishop f1 to open up the e-file.
Where do you think Shakir should put his bishop?
To my eyes, it looks like bishop f5 is the move that can be played here to go for d3 pawn, then knight b4, attacking d3 and threatening c2. But hold on, maybe this is the idea of Hikaru. Then bishop on e7 will be hanging. Yeah,
bishop f1, but you can also just defend it with rook fe8 maybe. And then I guess Hikaru might play a3 to prevent knight b4.
Knight a5.
Right, you could try to sink your teeth into this square. Although here you already get some tactics, knight b5 and knight c7. Black can also play a6 or even bishop f8. I mean, here you could have a trade of all of the rooks, and this is maybe a fast track to a draw.
Right.
So
yeah, just open up the e-file, trade the rooks there, and by the time you can also reach move 30. For now it's 13, so they have to make 30 moves to offer a draw.
Yeah, I'm sure they're checking their score sheets and thinking of various repetition is not easy in a position like this. They're unlikely to repeat moves because there's just no source of the repetition.
That's
right.
But
Hikaru's playing very quickly. He still has all of his time. Shakir taking a little bit longer. Hikaru makes everyone nervous, even in totally equal positions.
Yeah. At this point, they slowed down a little bit the play. Also, in the other game, we don't have moves. Let's bring the bird's eye view. Bishop e1 is the last move that Wesley played. And
bishop e1. Great move. And Amina's still thinking. That's a testament to how difficult. I honestly think his position's already pretty difficult from a practical standpoint. Maybe still objectively close to equal, but not easy to play. He's gotten out prepared, and Wesley obviously wants to win this game. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't want this to get into the rapid. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's that's true. That he just wants to have one extra day to get himself ready for the finals. If he wins this game, then it will be easier for him to play second game, where draw also means that you qualify. And Dania, you probably know Wesley better than us. What is his routine, if you know, like how's he spending his day offs? Is he preparing all the time? Is he walking or doing some other activities, but not chess?
I know he's a fan of walks. My guess is that Wesley's incredibly disciplined as far as I know. And I don't know his exact his routine, but I know that he's he probably doesn't play Title Tuesday during a tournament. I think that's not really his style. He takes preparation very, very seriously. And he has an incredible memory. So my guess is that he probably spends at least a couple of hours reviewing the key lines, making sure that he remembers them. And he's a beast. I mean, he's so consistent. He's probably one of the most consistent players of all time. And that's saying a lot because most of the super GMs are pretty consistent in their own right. But Wesley never gets too high with the highs, never gets too low with the lows. He's always there, and he's always just playing well.
That's right. And we know that he has cats. Not only one, several of cats. And some interviews he mentioned that he missed his cats and he doesn't feel good without them.
Adorable.
Yes, probably he feels comfortable when he's at home and he can. Has he ever traveled by cats at the tournament in USA?
I've never seen his cats at a tournament. My guess is that they probably remain at home, or maybe they're deposited in a cat hotel. I didn't actually know that was a thing until recently, and then I thought that was really cute. An animal hotel, a pet hotel.
We have the move in the game of Shahryar and Hikaru, and he answered to our question. He decided to develop this bishop on e6, and he tries to maybe close this e file. And Tanya, is he going to play d5?
If Hikaru's not careful, White could slip into a slightly worse position. You can see the eval bar already sort of implying that Hikaru has to be careful. And I think bishop e6 is a great move. I think what Shahryar is saying is, look, I mean, I'm not risking that much by playing d5. This isn't like I'm not sacrificing my queen. Queens have already been traded. Let's say we have a trade on d5. White is worse here. Pawn on d3 is weak. The bishop is passive. Bishop takes f3 is a positional threat. The other bishop's coming out to f6. Hikaru has to be very careful here not to just make a couple of nonchalant moves and then end up defending for the rest of the game. I like bishop e6 a lot. Now I think, yes, he's absolutely preparing d5.
And what about Dania if White goes now himself d4, for instance, started with knight b5, or it can be also played d4. And here after capturing on d4, then knight b5 attacks this pawn back, and now it will be black who's gonna have the weak pawn on d6.
Right. So here black could go d5, but this I don't like because of knight takes d4, and the bishops on e6 is going to be in some trouble here. So I don't think black should go counter strike with d5. I think that black should go knight e4 and jump into the square, make contact with the bishop, so knight takes d4 is impossible. And if the bishop moves out, then black can either go g5 and keep harassing it, or maybe bishop f6 in certain cases. Hikaru's definitely calculating d4, though. If he can make it work, then it definitely solves all of White's problems. But I don't think it quite works in the way that he would want it to work because of this knight e4 idea.
Right. And Dania, what about knight b5 here? White wants to play knight c7 and get the e6 pawn bishop, and then pawn on e6 will be weak. So if we play rook c8 here, if we avoid these kind of threats, or rook to d8. Maybe white gonna play bishop to f4 to start to attack d6 right away.
Yeah, that's a thought for sure. D5 here. Yeah, you could argue that white has already knight c7, for example. So black probably would end up playing rook f to d8. But the issue is now white's in a bit of a standstill and black wants to play a6 and then d5 again. Right?
Right.
So
And,
it's hard.
And in case of d4 here, maybe a6.
Yeah, d4, a6.
D5.
5, fire on board. Yeah, we managed to make this endgame sharp. That's pretty. Wait, does black have bishop takes d5? CD and then knight takes d5 and 2 minors are hanging at the same time? I think he does.
Yeah, that's a bad news for white indeed.
Man, that is pretty cool endgame tactics here. I mean, white can play bishop takes d6, but he's going to end up a pawn down at the end of the day. So that doesn't seem to quite solve white's problems. Yeah, is Hikaru all of a sudden just a tiny bit worse here? That's pretty crazy. I mean, maybe this this whole c4 thing that he did just isn't isn't quite the most accurate way to play. I honestly don't think that he expected Shakhriyar to play this aggressively, and Mamedyarev's like, okay, you're going to give me a good endgame. I'm not just going to give you an easy draw.
Yeah, that's actually what I also have feeling, that Hikaru clearly showed his opponent that he wants to make a draw, and he expected the same from Mamedyarev's side, but Shak is holding for now. And he plays bishop to e6. This can get really interesting. Really interesting if Hikaru feels that Shak is going to play d5 and he's going to play for some initiative. Maybe he will be the first who will go for d4 or knight b5. And Zania, we're going to see all of this very soon. We're going to take our break right now, and we will be back with perhaps some more updates and some more moves. So guys, don't go anywhere, because they are just going to start and heat up the games right now. Welcome back, everyone. This is FIDE Grand Prix 2022, the final leg and the semifinals. And Dania, this is going to be our final games for the Grand Prix, and there will be no more tournaments before the candidate 2022. So the last chance for all the participants, but we already know that Richard Rapport and Hikaru Nakamura are gonna take a seat at the candidates tournament, and here we have a rest of the players as well. Jan Nepomniachtchi, runner-up. Timur Rajabov is nominated by FIDE. Jan Christoph Duda is a winner of the World Cup 2021. Alireza Firouzja, the winner of the Grand Swiss 2021. And we do have Fabiano Caruana, runner-up of the FIDE Grand Swiss, and Hikaru Nakamura and Richard Rapport has qualified from the Grand Prix series. And we do have here one question mark, and this spot will be taken by highest FIDE rated player according to the rating list May 2022.
And there's a caveat, and the caveat is that you have to play 30 FIDE rated games in the calendar year. Now, Ding Liren, who is almost 2,800, is the rating qualifier, but he hasn't fulfilled that 30 game requirement. So what's happening is pretty incredible. Ding is trying to play basically 26. He has 4 games so far, so 4 out of 30. He needs 26 more, and he's trying to play 26 games in the span of right around 1 month to try to fulfill that requirement and qualify by rating, because of course he couldn't qualify through the Grand Prix because he didn't play in the Grand Prix. So he's currently, Ketty, playing in a quadruple round robin with 3 other Chinese grandmasters. Then I think he's playing some sort of Swiss tournament that's 8 rounds. Then immediately he's playing another match that's 6. I mean, he's got an insane calendar. And all of this, remember, it's not like if he fulfills this requirement, then he has to win the candidates. So imagine if Ding actually makes it and then wins the candidates. That would be an insane story. So this is the fight going on in the chess order now. Ding trying to get those games in, and he seems to be successful. He has it all mapped out, and if the tournaments go as planned, Ding will be the rating qualifier.
That's right, Daniel. A few days ago, he made a statement and give an interview that he will play all the games that is required to get himself at the candidates tournament, and he's on the way. He has played 6 games so far, and he has scored 5 wins and made a draw today in the game with Black Pieces. So I think he's also winning some more rating points.
Yeah, he might be over 2,800. I mean, by the time his 26 games are finished. And I mean, for a top chess player, this is essentially unprecedented to play this amount of games in so short a time. And obviously that's going to be cutting into his candidates prep time. And in terms of his openings, Ketty, he's going to have to figure out what to do with his opening. I mean, does he play? He probably won't play his real stuff, his candidate stuff. But to play 26 games against GMs and to not play any of your openings is an incredibly hard task. So I'm really curious how he's going to negotiate all of that. That's a very difficult task for him and his team. But I definitely, I want to see Ding in the candidates. I'm going to be honest. He's such a legendary player. He deserves this. And this is, I think, going to be the most watched and most hyped candidates in history, because largely of Alireza's participation, and just because, and Hikaru's participation. And imagine if Hikaru wins the candidates and plays Magnus, that's going to be the most watched world championship ever by orders and orders of magnitude.
Yeah, that's right. So we have ahead of us a really hot summer, June 2022 in Madrid. All these players gonna go to Madrid. And Daniel, alongside with the chess games, also Chinese Federation should work on Ding's visa, because there was the issue of Ding Liren. That was the main reason why he could not make it to Europe to play the Grand Prix. And now they have to make sure that Ding gonna get visa by June and he can play at the candidates tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a great travesty if, for whatever reason, Ding could not gain entry. So we hope that all of the requirements can be squared away. In the meantime, shall we have a quick look at the bird's eye view? Kede, we've got one move in each of the games. Knight b6 by Amin and bishop to d1 by Nakamura. Which game catches your eye?
Bishop d1 catches my eye. This bishop particular d1 move. Yes, this looks a little bit passive move to my eyes. But he probably has some deep plan here. He's not going to allow black to play d5. He prepares something like bishop a4 to threat knight on c6 and the bishop on e7. Let's dive more in this game.
Yeah, so what is Hikaru's intention after d5? Yeah, my guess is he wants bishop a4. And the most straightforward idea is, well, can black win the pawn? Well, no, because after dc4, white can snap off this knight and then take back on c4. And black's got a ruined pawn structure, and black cannot take on c4 because he loses the bishop. So d5, okay, in this position, black can play a move like rook f8, and this still looks pretty good for black. But I think the key for Shakir is not to rush d5 and to start with something like rook fd8. This is maximally flexible. And now to meet bishop a4 potentially with knight b4. And now you could get something very, very sharp. White can play d4 and then black can respond with d5. But it looks like black is still having most of the fun here. White's piece is a little bit discombobulated. So something like this could happen. Or Shakir could go for the first line we mentioned. He could play d5, bishop a4, and now play something like rook fd8. And I still think he's slightly better.
Right, and then he can't go here knight b4 in this position instead of rook f2 d8.
Apparently there's a trick. White has a3. Looks like a blunder, but all of a sudden white plays cd. And after knight e1, rook e1, black's minor pieces are skewered. So black loses 2 pieces for a rook, and this is actually very good for white. That's an interesting line.
Yeah, that's very interesting line. And then after d5 and bishop a4, there is also opportunity for black to push this pawn on d4 and close the center. But after this, then white can play knight to e4 or maybe even knight e4 right away and try the knights. And this is not as dangerous as the pawn can be on d5.
Yeah, the pawn on d5 gives black more options. On the other hand, what this does do is fix the pawn on d3, and this is a huge weakness for white. It's like the Benoni pawn on d6, kind of similar to that. And black can play something like bishop f6 with the idea of, okay, I guess the Ivabar not a huge fan of this move specifically because of bishop takes knight, but something, okay, rook ac8 might be worth it just to secure the knight at some point. What I'm trying to say is black wants to play bishop f5 and start to target this pawn. So even this position, I think, is quite good for black.
Right.
Yeah, so the big question right now is, does Shakir go d5? Or does he make a preparatory move such as rook fd8? The lines could transpose into each other. He could start with rook d8 and then play d5 or play d5 first. He's taking a pretty significant amount of time. He's down to an hour. So he doesn't have forever. He's going to have to make some decisions at some point.
Yeah, Danny, I was thinking, how come this position is so similar, and this pawn structure, also the pieces are looking very symmetrical. And then I think that bishop being on d2, not on e3 or f4, this bishop doesn't create anything. Like if the bishop is on e3, then you create a threat of d4, like black now does with bishop e6. If bishop is on f4, you target d6 pawn. So I think the main reason here is bishop d2, that black has a little bit of something that white has to worry about.
I think that's a great point, and I would remind everybody, when did Hikaru put that bishop on d2? After h6, he went all the way back to d2. Did Hikaru, probably out of fear that this bishop would get excommunicated from the game. Like if you go bishop h4, Shakira could go g5, and this bishop would be sitting on g3, and it wouldn't exactly be sitting pretty. It's just sort of biting on granite. Maybe bishop f4 here would have been a better idea. Maybe this was the chance for Hikaru to improve, but you know, then you could be walking into knight d5 at some point. So when also, Hikaru played bishop d2, it made sense.
He also bishop f4. It just looks d6 pawn, which is well guarded now, and you cannot imagine that in next moves black can play c5 from this point. Like if bishop is on f5, Shakira would never go c5 here. And it happens also if bishop goes on e3, Dania, knight d5, knight g4. So that's quite unnecessary jumps you would not like to face. And for this reason, he went this bishop back on d2. And yeah, something is wrong with this bishop.
I think I know where Hikaru could have just basically forced the draw. In this position, rather than going c4, I think playing d4 might have been a little bit more accurate, because, okay, Shakira is not going to take that pawn, because that would leave him with an isolated pawn of his own. He would have castled. Hikaru can trade on c5 and then go, you know, a move like knight e5 is preferred by the engine to delay and try to discourage the development of black's knight. And here, I mean, white has no problems. This is completely equal. This should be a draw. So this move c4, it's tempting to play symmetrically, but because of this idea of d5, it's just not quite comfortable. d5 bishop a4 is on the board. Hikaru responding immediately to Shakira's advance. And now I'm expecting rook f8.
Yeah, black has a lot of options here. Rook d8, rook c8, rook e8. Also d4 is possibility there. I dislike the move d takes d4, as we showed earlier, that this double pawns will be there. But Dania, is that actually a problem for black? Like, I can have double pawns, but then I have a pair of bishop, and in the end game, pair of bishop is a huge advantage.
Yeah. So the issue here, you know, when you have a bad pawn structure, the question is always, it's not about the aesthetic, the look of it. It's about, you know, can these pawns be attacked? And in this case, the answer is yes. And here's an example of how. Let's say black plays a random move. White's going to play b3 to defend the c4 pawn. Then this knight from c3 is going to maneuver to a4. The bishop from d2 can swing over to e3, and already the c5 pawn is going to be under tremendous pressure. For example, rook a d8, knight a4. And it's just not clear how black prevents this from happening. Bishop e3, that'll force the knight back to d7. And it's not that black will lose the pawns. It's just that the weakness of the pawns is going to force black into a passive setup with absolutely no counterplay, two bishops or not.
Yeah, that's quite unnecessary situation here. Shakir would never feel comfortable to get in this position. And he now has the pawn on d5. He can still hold this center and keep the pawns there. Dania, rook e8 here looks quite a bad move, right? This rook guards e7 bishop, which is hanging in many lines, but it also steps on the pin. So this knight on c6 will be under some pressure, maybe knight e5.
Knight e5, I guess tactically this works out for black. Knight takes e5, and if you snap up the rook, then black takes on d3. That's a very strong intermediate move. Everything, white loses a bunch of stuff. So that doesn't quite work. Maybe rook e8 actually works out tactically. Now, the thing is here, what white could do is actually trade everything on d5, go knight e5 now. And now this move is significantly stronger because knight e5, bishop e8 now works out for white. This, I think, would lead to a liquidation and likely a very quick draw.
All right. But this is not the only move that black can play. As you mentioned earlier, rook d8 also makes sense to bring this rook on the D file. That's the most important file for now, and try to open up the D file. Why not?
Yeah, rook fd8 is definitely the most natural move. No question about it. If I had to bet, I would bet on rook fd8. But d4 also has to be considered here. This is a, any moment when the pawn structure can be changed is an important moment, because pawns don't go backwards. So if you play d4, you commit to that. If you don't play d4, you allow white to play c takes d5. So, and like I said, I think already Shakir can smell a slight advantage. So he's not exactly thinking what the fastest way to make a draw is. No, he's already thinking of a way to keep putting pressure on Hikaru, even if the advantage is objectively very, very small.
Yeah, that's right. And according to statistics that we can see now on the screen, head-to-head statistics, obviously Hikaru would be more happy to go to the tie-break format and then to go in blitz format. That's where he scored most of the points. So Shakir has, I like how he's just slowing down a little bit this situation, not going right away into tomorrow's game and makes a draw here. So he's taking his chances with black pieces. This is quite nice.
Yeah, and this is, I think, partly the Magnus effect, where players now they just aren't quite as eager to make really quick draws, perhaps, as they used to be. And even if there is just a tiny inkling of an advantage, even 10, 15 years ago, there would still be a lot of draw offers. And even if there's a tiny advantage, Veselin talked about that a while ago in a broadcast. Now, the tiniest advantage, players, and not just Magnus, but all top players, they're not just going to give away draws. They're going to try to pounce.
That's true, actually. That's what we have seen here at the Grand Prix. And this is knockout state system, right? We have here this 6 rounds, and then you can be just kicked out if you don't score the best of the point. But also overall, just players are not going to these easy draws anymore. And the other factor that we have is also the draw is impossible to be agreed before 30 moves. This is another rule as well, which tries to avoid early draws, but it's not fully avoids it, as the players can repeat the position 3 times and just fix the draw.
Right. So as Shakir, I was thinking the last thing I'll say about this position I forgot to mention is that white actually does have a threat. The reason we're considering these moves in the first place is that white threatens to win a piece with c takes d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, and at the end, bishop takes c6, removing the defender of the e7 bishop. So that's the reason why we were even discussing rook fe8, and rook d8 defends the pawn with the rook. So black will not have to move this bishop out of the way from e6. Okay, Shakir, as we speak, he has played rook f to d8 as expected, and it's taken him another, 7 minutes. So Hikaru now settling into a think. We will see. He might have to take on d5 and go for that central trade. But shall we take an opportunity here to look at our other game?
Yes, Tanya, because we do have here a move after long thinking. Tabatabai decided to bring the knight on b6, which we have on the bird's eye view. And let's now bring it on the big screen and try to figure it out what is happening after knight b6.
So the most tempting move for white is b takes c4. We were discussing a position like this, and we mentioned that the white queen, queen b3 or queen d3, leading to a position where knight takes d5 is now a threat. Now, what could be a means counter to that? Even e5. Oh, e5 here actually. No. Knight takes d5 is not a threat because of knight f takes d5. I apologize. That's actually a nice detail. And the knights defend each other, and the other knight defends the rook.
So knight b6 came in here to guard the rook in these lines.
Mm-hmm. That actually prevents knight takes d5 in many positions.
Right.
So takes, and now queen b3 is one move. Queen d3 keeps the queen. So since knight takes d5 is not a threat, I think queen d3 might be better as a way to prepare e4.
Right. Daniel, there is one funny line I would love to suggest at the current position after knight b6. If white goes for a5 to kick this knight and bishop takes this pawn, then before
traps the bishop. That's hilarious. Like, because it's so easy to think, the idea of a5 is to play knight takes d5, but no, all of a sudden you trap the bishop. That's funny. So black will have to play c takes b3, and I guess this is the reason why this doesn't quite work out for white. But that's a cool detail. That's a cool tactical detail.
Yeah, a5 looks a funny move, but yeah, you don't need to push the pawn there. This pawn can be lost in next move.
In terms of non b takes c4 moves, and I think Wesley's going to take that pawn if I had to guess, the immediate e4 should probably be considered as well. And Ketty, this is a tremendously complicated position. So much going on both sides of the board. It's just hard to capture the zen of this position.
And Dania, what happens if black just remains this position and don't react with any capture and just moves queen away, tries to bring the rook? How white is going to proceed this position? Is he going to play e5 and then try to play on the king side, or he will remain these pawns in the center? Yeah,
probably e5. I made a random move like queen d7, which actually might hurt black even more because now the knight can't go there. But okay. This, I guess white's standard idea here is to push the f pawn, go f4, and then even g4 and f5. And if with enough tempi, black center is likely to totally collapse, and white gets some major kingside play here. So I think that's white's idea with e4 is to go e5, lock in the center, and then push the f pawn down the board.
Right.
But there's some really cool alternatives here, like knight e4 apparently is a move. Bishop takes e1, knight c5. Look at this idea.
Ooh, rook c5 is now not so good, as pawn takes c5 and the knight on b6 is hanging and the bishop on e1 is hanging too. So you cannot save both of them.
No, you cannot. So rook takes c5 isn't possible. And so you have to leave this knight on c5, which can later combine with a knight from f4 to pressure the e6 pawn later on. Not immediately, obviously, because it's defended by the rook.
Wow, knight e4 is one fancy move.
Yeah, so e4 is a candidate move for sure. And apparently, even e5 can be considered for black. Man, I would not want to have this position with either color. It's not even that crazy. It's just so hard to make moves here. I mean, what do? You can capture so many different things on every move.
Yeah, this is the pawn structure that we don't see very often. And it takes some time to see the games, how they are reacting, how you should react. You need to think a little bit what can be your plan. And for this reason, it should be quite difficult for players, but Tabatabay has 1 hour on the clock, and Wesley also they have very similar time, Dani. And we started with saying that Wesley was very well prepared in here, and it was probably his home preparation, but he is having the same time as Tabatabay at this point.
And he's made a move, and it's neither e4 nor b takes e4. It is queen a2. Which I honestly did not expect, but it makes sense. He's moving the queen away from the rook's x-ray. That's right. He wants to eliminate that headache. And that queen on a2 is not as bad as it may look. It's also supporting a4, a5, which now becomes probably a full-fledged threat. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. What do you make of this move, Ketty? Just like intuitively.
I like this move, queen a2 here. And I don't know how to respond against it.
So bishop d6 is the engine choice. And the idea is if white says, oh, b takes c4 wins the pawn because b7 hangs, well, no, because after knight takes c4, I hope you haven't forgotten about the e3 pawn, which is, always a weakness for white. And this is a disaster. So in response to bishop d6, Wesley could shut down the queen side with b4. But now Amin with counter-strike in the center with e5. And I actually kind of like Black's position here. I feel like Black gets a lot of activity in a situation like this. Probably still about equal objectively. But, I mean, Amin would love a situation like this, especially given the fact that Wesley had this deep preparation.
It's right. So you spent some time already on the clock. And then here, White has this very good pawn structure. But if you don't use it rather fast, then Black can start to counterplay in the center, and Black's pieces are not so passive.
No, not at all. I mean, the queen on e8 is pretty well placed to prepare e6, e5. In terms of like what actually is White's threat, like if Amin makes a random move, I guess the actual threat is bc4, rook c4, and then a5. And this just leads to an unpleasant situation where if the knight moves away, wow, there's the move knight e4.
Ooh.
Knight takes d5, there's ed5, and e3 again is a bother for White.
Okay, so knight e4 is, yeah, here bishop b4, queen e3 is a threat. So knight e4 is a knight e6.
And then this is the idea.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I had some help in finding this idea.
Wow, that's nice. That's very nice.
And White's up in exchange at the end of the line. So that is White's threat. I mean, can't just like, I mean, he's not going to play king h8. I was just trying to illustrate what the actual idea is. So bishop d6. Bishop d6 looks like a really good move here. Just get the bishop away from it all and prepare e5.
That's right, but not easy to make this decision as the bishop is not under attack now, unless you see this crazy knight e4 and all these ideas there. And it's just not hanging, and very often it hurts to just bring very active piece back to the sixth rank, and then but it's possible if Tabatabai.
Sorry,
Katie,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to echo your sentiment. It is hard, especially because this means opening up the B file, and you have to spot the detail of c takes b3. That's all I was going to say, and then the knight coming to c4. So, well,
all right.
I mean,
and Dania, move like a5 will be met by knight b5 still, right? It's just never good to give up the b5 square.
Probably not terrible, but yeah, I don't think Amin is going to go for this. This is the kind of move you play out of necessity, a5, and I just don't think that these kinds of measures are necessary, but probably not bad. Probably even a5 is totally acceptable for Black. Knight b5, rook c6, defending the d6 square. Yeah, no, this also looks pretty good. Yeah, the knight's good, but where is it really going from b5? What is it doing there? Definitely can be considered by Amin. No question.
All right, waiting for the moves on the both boards, Dania. Let's bring the bird's eye view and check it out. Rook d8 in the first game has been played as a last move, and now Hikaru Nakamura is thinking, and queen a2 has been played in the second game, and Tabatabai is thinking. We do have some time now, and we can talk a little bit about the players. We have not heard a lot about Tabatabai, and we don't know much about him, Dania. We can
let's pull up his card. 152nd in the world, 26-23. I will look this up, but I think he's been up as high as like 2650. He's only 20 years old. Now his name
21.
He just
had a birthday, yes.
Oh wow. Well, happy birthday to him. A big milestone. So he's not a spring chicken by chess standards. I already feel ancient. I was basically present for the fall of the Roman Empire at 26, but he's experienced. He's got some tournaments under his belt. And Ketty, apparently his most notable tournament victory was, you mentioned it. What tournament did he win recently?
Grand Swiss.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, at the breaks. Sorry. That was he's the winner of Bill Musker Open.
Beal.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah, Beal is a very strong Grandmaster tournament. And so 2019, I mean, that is 3 years ago already. So
Yeah.
he's proven himself at the top. The question for players like Amin, can he go that extra mile to, super GMdom? He's solid 2650 player, wins open tournaments, but can he compete with the likes of Wesley So, Levon Aronian, Richard Rapport? Vincent Keimer is in the same boat. Can he get that extra step? And so far, Amin has been showing us that, yes, he can. And this might be the start of a new era for him where he makes his way up to 2,700.
That's right. This is a good moment for him to show everyone, and first of all, to show himself that he can do it. And he's at the right track to do it. And he eliminated Anish Giri in his group, Nikita Vitigov, and also Yu Youngi too. And he got himself into the semifinals. And Tanya, he won this Beal tournament in 2019. That's the year when pandemic started, and we had no tournament at all, over the board tournament. We had a lot of online tournaments, but not that much of the over the board tournaments. And now we do have last year, these tournaments come back and back. And I kind of have a feeling that he was at his peak and then something interrupted him and he did not improve from there.
Yeah. And, and by the way, his live rating is apparently very close to 2650, 2647. But yeah, I mean, the pandemic affected players like Amin the most because he's at his peak age-wise, and sort of this is where he would be playing 10, 15 tournaments a year and just trying to make a run up to 2,700. So this, interruption of a year and a half, 2 years, it hurts players like Amin. It hurt players like Amin tremendously. So it's great to see him getting an opportunity to, to recover that form a little bit. And it's great to see that he has been able to maintain his form, ready to strike when he got the opportunity. And boy, did he get an opportunity at the Grand Prix.
Right. So he's here and he's playing really nicely at his events. And Dania, if he survives in the match against Wesley So, Wesley is incredible chess player and goes to the finals. That's going to be huge success for him.
Incredible.
And for his team.
And, I feel like this happening is really good for chess. Players like Amin Keimer getting chances in super tournaments makes them more interesting because it forces the top guys like Giri and Aronian to prove themselves. And it gives young players a chance to challenge themselves at the top. And it's a similar feeling I get when top GMs decide to play an open tournament, like Vishy Anand playing Gibraltar or Magnus playing these open tournaments in Qatar. Right. And I had a great experience playing. This is the only tournament I ever played where Magnus played. That was the Qatar Masters. I think maybe some people in chat remember those tournaments. They haven't been held for a couple of years. Do you remember that tournament? There were like three of them, I think. I
do remember, Tanya, because in the first round, one of my best friends, Grandmaster Nina Batsiashvili, drew her first game against Magnus Carlsen, and she was all over everywhere. And there were so many interviews about her, so many photos about her. In the end of the day, I talked with her. I was like, hey, congratulations. And she was like, I'm exhausted.
Right.
Too much
But she must have been so happy, though. I mean, that feeling must be, it's a lifetime achievement to draw Magnus.
It is. And she was, yeah, go ahead.
And it wasn't an accident. She drew from a position of strength. She was like better the whole game. It was incredible.
Yeah, she held it. And at the question, there was a lot of questions. How you did it? Are you nervous? How do you feel? And she was like, I don't know. It was just another game. It was just a normal game for me. And yeah, that's how I remember that tournament. So it was such a crazy start of Qatar Masters.
Yeah, Magnus drawing game one. And when he would come down from the stage to watch, the regular folks play like me, everybody would always straighten their shoulders and You know, if Magnus would be at your board, you're sitting at your board concentrating as hard as you've ever concentrated. It was a very fun tournament. And not only Magnus, Kramnik played. I played Kramnik, Wesley, all of the top GMs played in that tournament, and there were quite a few upsets. So it's always fun to watch. In the meantime, Hikaru is still trying to churn out the best way to stabilize the position after rook fd8.
He's taking a lot of time, Dania. He's not making a move. Yeah, he's not comfortable.
So I was just going to explore if Hikaru takes everything on d5, and then he takes the knight on c6 to ruin black's pawn structure, and then he plays the move knight e5, defending d3 and attacking c6. Is this a good way to minimize black's initiative? I think this might be the way, actually.
Bishop f6 looks very natural move to me now, yes, to give up c6 pawn, but I have pair of bishop. They are so strong. I will take d3 pawn, maybe b2 pawn later. But now white has bishop c3, and it just slows down a little bit of these ideas of black. And rook takes e5 now. If white takes the pawn on...
Yeah. No, this is a draw. This is a draw. If black takes, it's a draw.
Yeah, you just trade the pawns here, or just trade the bishops, and it will be just obstacle color bishops and the rooks. That's going to be not very hard for any of the sides to hold.
Yeah, of course, black is under no obligation to take on e5 or play bishop f6. But what else do you do? I mean, there is this weird move c4, which might be the best idea, because dc4 blunders the bishop, knight c4, rook d3. Okay, but something like even bishop c3 here, I find it hard to believe that Hikaru should lose this. Knight's coming back to e5. Bishop c4, of course, there's rook e7 with opposite colored bishops once again. I think that Hikaru will save this game, and he senses the moment. He's not a fool. He knows that this is an important moment to play accurately, or else he might slip further into a nasty position. So
yeah, that's right.
He can sense it, and I think he will find. I think he actually might go for that line. I think there's a pretty high probability that we'll see that on the board. That's my prediction.
Yeah, why not? Just to trade everything. I don't think he actually wanted to win this game. If he wanted to win the game, he would not trade the queens on the move 5-7. He would keep them on the board probably and choose another structure. And if he sees this line and he sees that in the end it's just fine there, he will definitely go.
Right. Yeah, so he's down to 55 minutes, still plenty of time, and a lot to calculate, with c takes d5 being a very committal move. You have to understand that the pawn on d3 being so weak is not the defining factor of the position.
That's right.
Will he go for this? Okay. We will see.
Yeah, we will see. For now, let's bring the bird's eye view. We don't have any moves here in the other game of Wesley, and Amin is taking some of his time after queen a2. This is the move that you might think a little bit longer. Queen a2 creates a lot of threats here. a5, b takes c4, e4. So he's taking his time in here.
Yeah, it's funny that there's for us, when they take, like 15, 20 minutes on one move, we think, they thought forever. But I'm sure you can co-sign this, Getty. When you're at the board, 20 minutes feels like 2 seconds. And it's like, right. How is it possible that 20 minutes just passed? I calculated one variation and I have no idea what to do still. As Hikaru actually takes on d5, by the way.
Yes, that's so common. I always try not to think more than 10, 15 minutes. But not always succeeding with that. And you never have enough time to think. You just always need more and more time.
Yes, you absolutely do. And by the way, bishop takes c6. There we go. Hikaru going for that line. And I think we're about to see knight e5 any second now. And there it is. So they have gone down this exact line. And I think Shakir will try c4. I think this is very much in his style to play a move like c4. And then we were considering knight takes c4, rook d3, bishop c3. The engine also showing that bishop f6 is an option. Black does not have to rush with the rook takes d3 and can try to discourage bishop c3 first. Because now if white plays bishop c3, he loses a pawn. Takes, and c3 is going to fall.
Right. And Dania, there is, after c4, there is also c6 pawn hanging. It's so tempting to take this pawn, as then bishop on e7 is under attack too. So after c4, what happens if white takes this pawn on c6?
Yeah, probably he should. And just bishop f8 or bishop f6. And the point is that the d2 bishop is pinned. So black is hoping to recapture the pawn on d3 with interest. Now, white can try the move d4 and say, hey, you can win this pawn, but I'm not giving you a passed pawn on d3. Rook c8, for instance. Now, knight takes a7 gets the knight trapped after rook c7, so the knight has to move back. Rook takes d4. Bishop c3, let's say rook d8, and we get this endgame, which I still think is preferable for black. Black has the two bishops. This pawn on c4 may look weak, but it actually gets a lot of space for black. But I mean, again, Hikaru doesn't lose these types of positions. This is nothing significant.
Right, it's not too much here indeed, but it's at the current position what we have. It is black to move. He can make here several moves, but none of these moves gives here any promising advantage to black to hope that Shakir can win.
Yeah, and you think of what makes Hikaru obviously such a hard player to beat. This is one of those qualities. He senses, like I said, when things are about to go wrong. He just has an amazing sense of that. And that's when he takes his time. That's when he takes 7, 8, 10 minutes or even more and says, I'm going to think for as long as I need to think. And I'm going to find a way to stabilize the game and minimize my opponent's advantage. And he did that. He did this here again. And I think it's going to give him the draw.
That's right. And at interviews, he said that he's not showing everything at the streams because he's analyzing the games and he's sharing how he was thinking, how he was feeling, what was his expectations. And then people started to ask him questions like, why you are sharing this information? Then your opponents can start to get ready against this moves that you are showing. And he said that he's not showing everything and he's not going to, because he is aware of the fact that there are people watching, seconds and coaches of his opponent, and he's not going to reveal any of his openings.
And before we go, I think on a short break at a bishop f6, bishop c3 has been played. We discussed this line. High probability that Shak just takes on e5, and that is going to fast track them toward opposite colored bishop endgame and a draw. So we'll monitor this game, but I'm not expecting it to last all that much longer, Kenny.
That's right. We have to still wait, and we have here, we don't even need to wait too much. Bishop e5 has been played, but Daniel, this is move 2021. They have still to make 10 more moves or repeat the position, so it's just not done yet. And we are going to take a break now, and we will be back hopefully before the game ends. Welcome back, everyone. This is the game. Hikaru Nakamura and Shahir Mamedyarov just ended in a draw, and we had here a repetition.
Whoa,
Dania.
Petty, a draw? Wait, did you miss it? Are you sure?
We have to check it. We have to check it.
There's no way this game ended in a draw. This was, I mean, I'm terribly disappointed. So Shakir, he could have gone c4. Maybe there was an inkling of a chance, but he decides instead to trade on e5. Technically, he's up a pawn, but, you know, this is not the kind of pawn that is going to win you the game. Hikaru building up a complete fortress on the queen side. h4, g5, a trade of pawns, and a repetition of moves. Rook h1, king g7. Our producer called it during the break. I got to give a shout out to Dick. He called this draw in this position, I think. Rook h1, rook e1, rook h1. Move 30 reached, a draw agreed, and Ketty, Hikaru getting what he wanted in the first game. Shakir, he's going to have the white pieces tomorrow. Something tells me he is not going to accede to a quick draw tomorrow.
Yes, Tanya, I think we have everyone happy now. Maybe our viewers wanted to see something more complicated and exciting game, but Hikaru is one step closer to his tiebreakers, and Shak is closer to the white pieces, and he will try his best with that too. So it's gonna be more exciting tomorrow, but still we have one game in progress. And we can see that rook f7 has been played here by Tabatabai. And this should be a very deep move, or he just wants to play rook f7, rook to c7 to open up the c file, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's just sort of a semi-waiting move. But the main point is to defend b7. I think the main point is to defend b7. So if you consider bc, rook c4, a5, for example, knight c8, any knight move by white, I mean, knight e4 is still possible. We should investigate that. We will in a second. But the bottom line is that when there's a trade of bishops, black, one headache that black doesn't have to worry about is the pawn on b7 being hanging, right? Black can divert his attention to other things.
Right.
Now, we considered previously knight takes d5. That doesn't really work because e3 is going to hang at the end of the line. Knight e4 is a move we have come across before, but in this case, Ketty, after takes, knight d6 apparently doesn't. Oh wait, there's a knight on c. What am I saying?
I thought
that's hilarious. I thought
you made this knight c8 move to avoid knight d6 after knight e4.
But do you want to hear something hilarious, Ketty? That for a while, the top engine move is bishop f2 check first to basically force the rook onto a bad square and then knight takes d6. That would be a funny. Imagine if someone did that. Oh man, they'd have to. So white has to play
right away by the arbiters and fair play arbiter for sure.
Right. No better way to attract suspicion to yourself. So this is forced. White therefore has to take an f6. I mean, probably I would prefer white here just because of the pressure on the pawn. This knight from e2 can swing around and try to get to e5, but you can see that the eval bar is giving equality, so all of this is not objectively all that significant. So that's what I would say. I think white's better practically, but if Amin remains cautious and he doesn't miss anything tactical, his position is fine. And Wesley takes on c4 as we speak.
Yeah, and Dania, Amin should just keep the time on the clock closer to Wesley. He should not drop his time down and get himself into the time trouble, because this is a position he can get worse if he has no time on the clock. So b takes c4, and now we here are expecting rook takes c4 rather fast, because bishop on b4 is hanging. You don't want to give up this bishop for the knight, and other moves are simply losing a piece here or a pawn here. So rook takes c4 should be played now.
Yeah, he should, and he shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, bishop takes c3, I guess, is the other possibility, but now rook takes b6. And at the end of the line, this rook is a problem. And knight f4 is coming, e6 is hanging. This is not appetizing in the least for black. I mean, should quickly play rook takes c4 here.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm talking. Like moves like
yeah, exactly.
this rook c4 should be played very fast, not to spend even 2 minutes for this, because these 2 minutes can be very useful after, I don't know, 10 moves, maybe 20 moves. But he has to make this move now.
Yes, he does. He's down to 40 minutes. He's got 20 moves before the time control. And the last thing you want to do against Wesley is get yourself into severe time pressure in a complicated position.
Right, and there's not any other moves, like you can't play bishop a5 or a5 here, because then c5 will be played and rook c4 has been played.
Yeah, and now we're expecting a5. I think if Wesley doesn't play a5 now, then, well, what does he do? Because the knight on c3 is under pressure. So he would like to play knight f4, which is actually possible here because b6 is going to hang at the end of the line. But black has the move knight f to d7 here, which is very strong. And now that hits the knight on c3, defends b6. And again, it's not entirely clear how white should proceed here. So a5 to me seems pretty automatic. A5 seems pretty automatic to me.
A5, if this move gonna be played or not. But I kind of have a feeling that Wesley is not going to think too much for this move, and he rather play faster. And Dani, is he confident in blitz and rapid format? Wesley, does he likes to play that format as much as Hikaru, for instance?
So not as much as Hikaru. I think Wesley probably top 5 in rapid time control. In blitz, Wesley is a little bit more uneven. Like he can play amazing blitz, but sometimes he can struggle. So for Amin, I think that he definitely wouldn't mind a rapid tiebreak because, but inherently, when there's a limited time control, there's more uncertainty. And when there's more uncertainty, there's a greater chance that, stuff happens. Amin gets the right type of position, and, Wesley can get flustered when the position is not to his liking. So he definitely doesn't mind a 2 draws for sure.
And Dania, we now can say the head-to-head statistics, and it is very important that information that they have never played over the board chess before. So this is the first game between these two players. They don't know each other as an opponent. As for instance, Shaka and Hikaru know, and they have played 75 games before, but they have never met each other on the chessboard, but they have played a lot of online games. And now we can see the statistics, and we can see that in the rapid time control, Wesley has won 1 game and they made 1 draw. And in blitz portion, he's better, as he have won 9 games. Wesley made 3 draws, and Tabatabai won just 2 games.
Yeah, so Wesley with the clear edge, even in their online games. I mean, is a pretty inveterate blitz player online. He plays a lot on chess.com. He plays a lot of the Title Tuesdays. He hangs around 2,900, 3,000 blitz ratings. So he's obviously very, very good. I mean, all of the young players today are just good at blitz. Like they just are. I mean, it's in the culture.
Right, Danielle, when I was young at the youth category, whenever I wanted to play blitz in internet, my coach was always pretty much strict with that. And he thought it was not so good for me, as I was blundering a lot of pieces there, and I was not spending too much hours, and it was a different approach. And nowadays we can see that these players and youth players, they are using actually advantage of the online chess, and they are learning a lot from it.
I think Firouzja is a great example of that. Although he hasn't really played online the last year or so, he basically grew up playing 30-second chess online and tons of blitz. Like there was a point at which he was playing every day, all day. And I think, as you indicate, some of the young generation has shown that you can use online blitz to help your chess. Like if you play it in sufficient quantities and you take it seriously, you become a better tactician. And if you combine it with training, I think the trap is to only play online blitz and then do it instead of your training. But if you do it in addition to training and opening study, these young players have shown that you can very much feed your online chess addiction and successfully maintain your rating at the over the board level.
Yeah, that's a good point, Anya. Not only just to replace your training by playing online, but to have something additional and just to use as a training tool to play online.
I have a story, but I've shared the story before on my stream. When I was about 1800, I had a phase where I played too much online. So this was like, I had gotten a laptop like a couple years before. My parents had instituted a time limit, computer use time limit, but of course I didn't obey that, as you can understand. So one night I think I played 70 bullet games on ICC. This is 2006, 2007. And I was like, my dad's not going to notice, my parents are sleeping. So I was up until like 1 a.m., which back then is, oh my God, So the next game, this was Monday. Tuesday, I had my weekly club game at the Mechanics Institute Chess Club, and I was playing a 1600. I was 1850, and I was a hot shot. I'm underrated. I come to the board. I blunder a knight in one move. He had a queen on d1. I had a knight on h5. And I had a pawn on g6, King's Indian. And he played e takes f5. I played g takes f5, just bluttering the knight on h5. Of course, when he took the knight, I just started nodding and I pretended it was a sacrifice. And I lost. And so I come out of the game and I tell my coach, who was back then John Donaldson, he was also the director of the Mechanics Institute. So he was there watching my game. And he says, I only have one word for you. And the word consists of 3 letters. ICC. And John, of course, he wasn't born yesterday. He looked at my game history. The moment I blundered the knight, he knew what it was. He was like, this is Daniel playing too much bullet. He looked at my game history and he saw that I had played 70 games. He told my parents, obviously, I got into trouble. And let's just say the next time that I played 70 bullet games in one day was already when I was a GM. So.
That's a funny story.
Hans in the chat saying, I've had a similar experience. Yeah, John, yeah, he wasn't messing around.
Wow. I think your coach has been at the place too, and he knew it, how it looks. I think many players have been in this situation when you play too much of the bullet chess or blitz chess, and then it affected to your game.
Yeah, too much. He was very like soft, and John is not somebody who gets like angry. He just sort of says stuff matter of factly. But the anger part was relegated to my parents, obviously. Plenty to go around.
Yeah, Donnie, yeah. I had some struggle to come to the normal chess from the bug house. We loved to play bug house whenever we were alone in the room. Whenever the coach was leaving, we were like 20 people in the one room, and we were like teaming up with for the bug house, and we were playing a lot of blitz games. And then when we had to play also tournaments at the same day in a few hours, and then I had these difficulties to concentrate, and I wanted additional pieces to put on the board.
Where's my knight? Knight on e6. Like, where is it?
Yeah, and then from that sense, I could feel it, that what coach was saying, that don't play backhouse before the tournament, don't play too much. It was actually affected my brain and other kids too.
Yeah, kids love their bug house. I mean, here too, bug house is more popular than blitz among kids at tournaments. I never loved bug house. I don't know why, because I'm a tactical player, and bug house is obviously an insanely tactical game. But I've never been into chess variants, and blitz has always been such an addiction for me that blitz honestly overtakes everything. There's nothing I love more than staying up all night after a tournament playing blitz with some of the players, and then going to the airport at 6 a.m. just feeling dead. Like, you just played a tournament, you stayed up all night and playing blitz. Oh my goodness, sleeping everywhere. I almost got into trouble one time. I was playing a tournament in Corsica, and I flew out of Paris. I had to fly back to Paris and then to fly back to the US from Paris. So the tournament ended. I played a blitz tournament after the regular tournament. Then I stayed up all night. And then I stayed up all day the next day because I had to fly from Corsica to Paris. And then my flight from Paris to San Francisco was the next morning. So I had to make the Charles de Gaulle airport at around 5 a.m. And I was staying in a hotel right next to the airport. And of course, I was like, I'm just going to watch 3 series, but I'm going to do them from bed. I'm going to stay up, but I'm going to watch them from bed. And the next thing I know, the phone rings. I'd set a wake-up call, and I was like completely out of it. So I almost missed the flight. So it can be very dangerous to do this. I'm sure everybody has the equivalent story of like, I almost missed the flight because I engaged in degenerate behavior. Yeah. The night before.
Exactly. Danny, I had this experience for over the board chess. There was a tournament here last year in summer, which started at midnight and lasted until 4 a.m. And it was one crazy event. Even Jan Christoph Duda played there. He won the event. And usually in Poland, we have these big events, and it's just a celebration of chess, and you just love to do it. Sometimes we have the tournaments in the parks or in the main squares, and hundreds of people are playing. So it's quite common to take a part in this kind of craziness, but playing at midnight and in a game at 4 a.m. it's not a joke at all. Luckily, we had a sponsor of tea company and tea and coffee company, and can you imagine how many coffees we got that day for free?
Yeah, I mean, I can. It's constant. So the tournament started at midnight.
Started at midnight, and it was a lot of rounds, and we ended up at 4 a.m. was a closing ceremony. We even have photos, and some people had to leave at the airport. I had to come back at home to work for chess.com. I was doing the commentaries back then for the Olympiad. And I remember that I did not sleep. I just prepared myself at 5 I left the city, and at 9, I was already here sitting, ready.
That's honestly commentating when you're after like an all-nighter is, I've had that experience. It is brutal. You're just, you're grasping at anything to stay awake. You're like, trying to force yourself to look at variations. I gotta look at variations. I gotta forget that I'm like on the brink of collapsing.
Yeah, I was truly close to collapsing. Then we do have here some of the moves.
A move.
A lot of moves, in fact. A5 has been played by white, and black decided to take the knight on c3. First. Okay.
So he didn't move the knight back to c8. He decided to throw this exchange in first, and now knight c8 he's going to play. I don't know about that. I don't know if that was necessary from Amin's perspective. We didn't, because knight e4 was not dangerous, and knight takes d5 didn't work. Maybe he didn't see that knight takes d5 allows ed. But Ketty, this trade definitely favors white. I mean, now white doesn't have to worry about all of this pressure on, on the bishop and stuff.
I like white's bishop here. This bishop can get some nice diagonal, can come on g3 and control a5, d6 square. The knight can go around on a4, c5. I do really like this bishop, and black has a lot of holes. As the bishop is gone now, you can see quite a lot of holes right now.
And let's not forget that e4 is still an idea that can be executed in certain moments. Maybe not immediately. I mean, if you play it immediately, you drop, if nothing else, you drop the d4 pawn, which is unnecessary. But white could prepare e4 by making a move like queen d2 or the engine like knight e2. There's a lot of choices here. Knight a4, though, I mean, not going for knight c8. Okay. He's surprising me on every turn here.
Wow, he's going for a trade. And if knight takes a4, is he going to take by the queen and tries to trade the queens as well? Or he prefers to take with a rook and then gets another rook on c file?
That's a good question. So if you trade queens, this b7 pawn is a big problem because it's fixed by the a5 pawn, which is in turn defended by the bishop, and black doesn't have a dark squared bishop anymore. So rook f2, rook b2 is really, really bad for black, especially if black loses that b7 pawn, which may be inevitable.
Right.
This isn't good. So I would say he has to take with a rook. But, okay, queen b3 and the knight on f6. Look at how it's totally restricted by the f pawn. So yeah, this is good for white.
Yeah, it looks good for white indeed. I'm a bit surprised with this decision, but he wanted to trade the pieces, and maybe he's hoping that he can move this knight around. If knight gets on c4 square, Dania, look at this.
Oh, yeah.
Knight will be very strong there.
That would be a dream scenario for black, but the knight is very far. I don't even see a pathway because you can't go through b6. That border is closed. e5 is closed. Yeah, the knight doesn't have any prospects. That's honestly why I think black is in trouble here positionally.
But if the knights are off the board and if black manages somehow to activate this knight, then the knight will be way much better than the bishop. Because just imagine knight is on c4, attacking a5, a3, e3, and it plays against the white bishop. This is just a perfect position for black.
And Wesley has captured.
Yes. How about queen takes a4 and then knight e8 and knight d6 to get on c4?
Oh, so takes, knight e8. Nope, that is not a very good move.
Not that way.
Before rook f2, knight e8. Okay, so my first inclination was to play bishop b4, but then you can play knight c7, knight b5, and once your knight gets to b5, it closes the b file. So let's think: rook b1, sorry, rook b2,
knight d6,
knight d6,
guards the b7.
Yeah, now the knight is very close to getting to c4, so that's also not effective. And if you play rook b6 here, that might be the move. Rook b6, knight c7.
Mm-hmm.
And now
b7 is hanging now.
Oh yeah, I can also take b7, or I can go rook c2, and a bunch of stuff is hanging. e6 might hang if you move the knight again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the simplest is rook takes b7. And even though the knight gets to b5, now you're down a pawn. You might be down another one pretty soon. This is probably the way to play here for white. I mean, has taken with a rook. He has taken with a rook. And now queen b3, queen c2, something like that.
Yeah, if queen c2, maybe what he's hoping for is rook c4 first to cut this file, and then another rook to come on c file and just try to trade more pieces here.
Yeah, I think queen c2, rook c4 is reasonable, which is why I think Wesley should consider going queen b3, which is why I think he should just avoid putting himself under unnecessary attacks. And the queen could also jump into b6 if necessary. For instance, rook c7 could be met with queen b6, and then bishop g3 is on tap as well. Even bishop g3 instead of this might be quite strong. White's better. White is clearly better. Amin just has an unpleasant position full of holes, as you said, and he's going to have to hunker down and defend.
That's right. And Daniel, when you play this on the board, do you feel it with black that you are just having worse position because of this e6, b7 weaknesses, or if you feel like, okay, I can guard them and I can hold the position?
Well, I would feel that way unless I was playing Wesley. I think I would be less concerned about this position per se, but Wesley is so unforgiving in these kinds of positions. His technique is exquisite. So, and 35 minutes for Amin is not a long time for 17 moves. So yeah, not great. And where was the mistake specifically? I think things started going a little bit wrong for him here. I mean, rook f7 might be less accurate than bishop d6. And then taking on c3 first was unnecessary and exacerbated the problem, I think.
Right. This bishop d6 was a little bit hard for me to imagine that this move can be come to the hat as the first candidate move, because the bishop on b4 is not hanging and you're bringing it back but it had a good reason. But bishop to c3, just trading this bishop, this was I think the key point here at this position. He could still keep the bishop on the board, right, Tanya? Just bring it back on d6 and try to push e5 again.
Yeah, no, I mean, he could have played knight c8, and at least this would have kept some pressure on White's position. I don't know what it is specifically that he was afraid of. It could have been a lot of different things. Maybe e4, maybe he hallucinated something after knight takes d5 or knight e4, or maybe he misevaluated this type of position. And again, I don't want to pretend that he's losing or anything like that. He's just, he's just worse.
Right.
But maybe he thinks that everything is protected. The pawn on b7 is protected. Queen coming out to c6. Maybe it isn't that bad.
Yeah, I would think this way too. That I have weaknesses, but for now I can hold it, and just bishop being on e1 and being on the dark squares, and the pawns also fixed on the dark squares might be longer. That stays there. There's also this path knight d7, knight b8, and knight c6 to come this knight in here, attack a5. That's gonna take forever, 3 moves at least. But if we get the end game, Dania, some pieces off the board, then black will be just fine.
Yeah, no, if black can force some trades, and everything again depends on the placement of the knight. You called this earlier. If you reposition the knight here, black might even be better. So nothing is inherent. White is not intrinsically better. It's just the fact that that knight on f6 is so bad, and it just doesn't have any way to improve its placement in an efficient way. That honestly, I think that and the fact that the b7 pawn is a permanent weakness, that's anchored by a pawn which is itself incredibly well defended by the bishop. Is behind.
Yeah, that's right. But there's one detail that's really good for black. e4 anymore is not anymore the serious threat. You don't want to push this pawn now with white's perspective, and e3 pawn can be something that black can start to go after. And Dania, what about moves like e5 here? Like if queen goes on d2, for instance, that we have right now. This is so weird looking move.
No, I think
e5.
E5 should be very seriously considered by me, and this opportunity might not be available again. Why did Wesley put his queen on d2? I think he might be preparing bishop to g3, or reassigning duties here and saying, okay, I want my queen to defend the pawn so that my bishop can control a lot of the dark squares in the center, and I potentially want my rook to anchor itself on b6. So if Amin does not play e5, the question is, well, what does he do? Well, let's say he plays rook c4 after bishop g3. Now he can never play e5, and now white has the very simple plan of doubling on the b file and creating even more pressure on black's position. So Kenny, I think Amin should very seriously consider playing e5.
Right, just to open up this center. Let's see what happens if d takes e5, if white takes this pawn.
Queen takes 6, bishop g3.
And queen.
I guess queen e6. Rook c1, for instance. It's still unpleasant for black.
It is.
But at least you can try to target this pawn. At least you have some source of counterplay. So, yeah, I would play e5 here with black. I'm almost certain that that is the best defensive idea.
Right, e5 can be played here. If not e5, Tanya, now then bishop g3 is obviously white's next move. Then going to be a little bit late for black. Maybe what he can do is to try to get this knight out, starting with queen to c6, for instance, and after bishop g3, knight e8.
Right. But then I feel like I don't think this loses to something specific. I just think rook b6 and then rook c1. And again, the knight is not getting to d6. And look at how Wesley is arranged. I mean, this is classic Wesley. Everything is placed perfectly now. Bishop is stopping the knight, queen is defending the pawn, and black is totally paralyzed here.
Okay, Bishop is not a good position.
Bishop g3 to e5, by the way, can be played as well to improve things even further.
All right, so Dania, if black plays now e5, what should be white's reaction? He should ignore this and go bishop g3 and just to get e5 square, or trade this pawns on e5?
I could see a case being made for bishop g3. I could see a case being made for this move. Ed, let's say rook e7. Yeah, white's bishop e5 and then maybe even f4. So that could be one idea. But I'm inclined to take this one. I think Wesley would take on e5 and go bishop g3. I just think this is so natural, and this allows you to get your bishop where you want it to go with tempo. And remember that d5 is also kind of a weakness. It's e3 might be more attackable, but d5 is a long-term weakness as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I really like here, Dania, that Tabatabai is doing. He's keeping 10 minutes difference on the clock. He usually makes the move at this range of the time, and he's not dropping his time to way too down, because that's a dangerous zone if you drop your clock down to 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Oh.
Yeah, it's awful, but he's got, a lot of moves to make. He's got a lot of important decisions to make. So let's say if he spends another 10 minutes here, then he's already in that like massive time pressure phase. So he's not far away from getting into really uncomfortable time pressure. 30 minutes for 16 moves is, it's not great.
Right. It's interesting to see this two battle in here, and yeah, we still don't know what is going on. Wesley is holding slightly better position from very beginning, but Tabatabai is standing strong as well. Tanya, so far, he's keeping it.
Yeah. For now, so far it's hard to say with certainty what's going to happen in the rest of the game. A lot is going to depend on, first of all, the next move. If Amin does not play e5 and Wesley gets his bishop to g3, then I feel like black will really end up in serious trouble. So I think it's important for Amin to play e5, first of all. And then it's going to be very important to defend accurately the next 5 or 6 moves.
Right. We're waiting the moves from Tabatabai. He's down to 30 minutes right now. And e5 is the move that's probably requires some calculation here, but he should not spend too much of his time in it, because after e5 it's not just like it happened in the other game, as Hikaru spent like 10 minutes and then he traded everything and it was a draw. Here after e5 it's not a draw. You still have to hold the position with the weaknesses on the board.
Yeah. No, this is a very important moment, and as Amin is thinking, Katia, I think probably a good time for a short break. I need a coffee refill.
Me too. Let's go for a short break, and you guys, please don't go anywhere because we still have one very interesting game in progress. Welcome back, everyone. This is semifinals at FIDE Grand Prix 2022. I'm Katie. This is Dania, and we do have one last game in progress. Dania, another game ended in a draw, and seems like both players are happy with this draw. Tomorrow they will switch the colors. Mamadira will go with white pieces, Nakamura will go black pieces, and we're gonna have just another day. But now we do have Wesley So and Amin Tabatabai still in progress, and I can see that the evil bar shows that Wesley has huge material advantage.
Yeah, I mean, this is not going the right direction for Amin. We went on break at this moment, and we were saying that e5 should be very seriously considered. This might be the last chance for Black to gain any kind of activity. Instead, Amin playing rook c7, a very puzzling move, walking right into bishop g3. So not only does he not play e5, but he allows this move with tempo. And then he gives up the pawn on b7. Wesley says, thank you very much. And Amin's idea is kind of understandable. He goes queen g6. He wants activity. He wants to go rook c2. And then his pipe dream is to bring the other rook then to a2. Now, is Wesley going to allow that? Obviously not.
Yeah, what I can see, rook b2 here can make sense. Rook c7 also makes sense here. So it has at least two moves to avoid this plan of Amin's.
Yeah, those are the two best moves according to the engine, rook b2 and rook c7. Rook c7 is perhaps a smidge better because it forces the trade of rooks, and white is a pawn up, so trades are generally going to be good. Now, the game is not over. Just because white's a pawn up doesn't mean that there are no defensive tries for Black. Rook c4 here is one of them. It could be met with rook c1. And just like intuitively, I felt like this is not that easy for white, but the engine seems to disagree and claims that after something even like bishop e5, it's +4. I mean, white should be able to convert this, I suppose, as Wesley has indeed played rook c7.
All right, Tanya, before we go more deep in this variation, was that the only way to play with black pieces here after bishop g7, bishop g3? He could play still rook d7, move rook f7, and hold this position. So do you think he felt so bad in that position? He was so passive there that he decided to go for a counterplay and give up a pawn?
That's exactly what it is, I think. I mean, rook d7, rook fc1, and this rook is, neither here nor there. Bishop e5 is coming. Rook c8, if the queen moves away. This is just miserable, and I think Amin just figured, all right, if I'm already, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die on my feet. And, that's, I think, what explains the pawn sacrifice. Maybe he missed rook c1, because the funny thing is, this threat of rook c2 is very, very strong. So rook c1 is actually quite an important resource that white has. Now, Wesley should be able to win this game. I mean, this is a dream come true for him, this game.
Right. And for instance, here, rook takes rook, queen takes rook, and queen d3. As we saw earlier in bishop e5. Now the threat is to take the knight and then give some checks, or how white is going to keep this king at the safety and then try to activate more pieces.
Yeah, and in terms of keeping the king safe, white has many options for how to do that. h3, king h2 is one option, just parking the king on a really, really safe square. And the problem when you don't have a bishop is a scenario like this. White gets the king to h2, and black can never check that king on, let's say, this diagonal, because as long as the bishop sits on e5, it restricts the queen completely, and the knight is just useless. I mean, there's just no squares for the knight on the king side. No, this should be winning for white.
And additionally, there's a6 and e6 pawns, so they both are weak, and queen cannot really guard both of them at the same time. And if king comes on f7, then it will be under some sort of checks. Now it is black to move. Black is thinking he has moved rook c4, but he decided to trade the rooks first, and maybe he's going after that. Is there any other alternative there instead of rook c4 and trade the other pair of rook?
Well, I think that the first question is after rook c4, rook c1, you don't have to take. You can actually just should keep the rook on c4, try to get white to take and at least create a passed pawn. So the engine supplies the move queen e8, which I quite like, swinging the queen to c6 and trying to wrest control of the c file from white. The way to save these positions, the first thing you need is some source of counterplay. You need to make your opponent uncomfortable. And I think this is the way to do it. You get your queen to c6. And if white takes on c4, well, that's very inadvisable because now black has an actual concrete source of counterplay, namely the c4 pawn. And the knight now has the d5 square. This is not a desirable transformation for white.
And the bishop in this position, that square bishop can be really useless as it doesn't control so much of the squares, the important squares, c3 and c2. And for instance, if you want to get this bishop on the side, the knight d5 just stops it. Queen b5, queen b3 helps c pawn to be pushed. It might be even pleasant for black to play this with a c4 pawn.
Yeah, no, Wesley's not going to go for this. But Amin is now thinking, or Wesley took on c7. Very surprising move, and rook c4 immediately by Amin. So there's our answer. And there's a very high probability that they go down this line.
And then it makes sense, Daniel, to go for this end game when you have a bit of initiative, rather than to wait your opponent when he outplays you.
Right. Now, for Wesley, he can also play bishop g3 here. That's the second way of taking the sting out of rook c2. Queen d1. And originally, I thought after knight h5, black gets a lot of activity and counterplay. And maybe he does, but with the move bishop f2, white can take, knight h5 is now not dangerous. And this is still very good for white, but this is not Wesley's style. I don't think Wesley likes to allow this level of activity for his opponent. I mean, nobody does.
Yeah, it's too passive here with bishop on f2, trying to cover the second rank, and it's going to take some time to just activate the pieces here. Also, queen has not much of a good square to go. Pawn is hanging on a5. So yeah, bishop g3 looks very passive move. How about bishop to... Yeah, if bishop goes anywhere else, Tanya, for instance, bishop e5 in the current position, then rook c2 wins a game on the spot?
Yeah, because the queen can't move away because of checkmate on g2. So you have to, the only two moves are rook c1 and bishop g3. And Wesley is currently comparing and contrasting them. Rook c1 unquestioningly being the more natural move, but then he's got to reckon with this queen maneuver to c6. And there's there's a high probability that black gets the c file under his control one way or the other. The question is, how do you want to give that control away? Under what circumstances?
Yeah, that's right. There is one little detail between these two moves. Bishop g3 still keeps these black's pieces very active there. And rook c1, black has to play this queen e8, queen somewhere on the king side, right? On the other side. So then white will be not as much under the pressure as it can be in the position where queen is on g6, rook is on the second rank, and trying to checkmate white's king.
Right. No, rook c2 looks quite a bit more dangerous, but Wesley down to 33 minutes. Neither side in significant time pressure. Amin has sped up in the last couple of moves. He's got 27 minutes. This is 50-50 maybe is the assessment that I would give in terms of winning chances to drawing chances. Maybe higher for white. Maybe it's more like 70-30.
It's still a pawn, and if white manages to get rid of this active rook of black's in white's terms, then it will be definitely better position.
Yeah. Hard to say which move is better.
Rook c1 is on the board.
And now let's see if Amin will quickly play queen e8, or will he get enticed by the possibility of taking, queen e8 instantly. And this is the good part, actually, about playing these positions on the defensive side. Oftentimes, your defensive approach is actually very straightforward. Like here, Black knows that he has to get control of the C file. Otherwise, he's going to have zero activity. And so a move like Queen E8 is very easy. Whereas for Wesley, there's options, and he's got to make sure that he doesn't allow too much counterplay. So in a weird kind of way, Black isn't having that bad of a time here.
Yeah, that's right. I always like to point it out when you have only moves to make it you somehow save your time, and you can find it easier than when you have like 4 moves to choose and you don't know which one is better. You have to spend some time there, and then you're getting really confused in these lines. It's a difference. It's always good to have an options, but not too much. Maybe not too much options.
Right, exactly. So after Queen E8, Wesley is, no pun intended, he's thinking. Now, if White wants to keep the rooks on the board, right, White will have to move the bishop away first, because Queen C6 is actually essentially a fork. So Bishop E5 or Bishop G3 can be considered. After Queen C6, I think we might have even considered this. Rook B1, Rook C2. And then apparently Queen B4 is good here. Just keeping the queen as active as possible.
How about check on B8, and if king goes on H7, then check on D3. In this way,
But the issue is this.
Yeah.
I think I go to F7. Yeah, your line is nice. King H7, Queen D3, G6, and now simply Bishop E5, and the knight basically can't move because of the mate on H8. This is really bad. But Black has the F7 square as well, and this is quite a bit safer.
Yes, and now Black can start to give some checks. And this king and the bishop on G3 don't have this path on G3 to hide there. And
right.
White needs one more move, H3 to be played here too.
If White had that in, if White had H3 in, then all of the problems would be solved simultaneously, because the White king could always hide on H2, but he just doesn't quite have time to play H3. And he doesn't have time to play it in the current position, again, because of the threat of Queen C6 and when White will be forced to take the rook on C4 and allow the pass pawn.
Mm-hmm. Danny, how about Bishop E5 here? Maybe this move can be very useful.
So Bishop E5, Queen C6, Rook B1, I assume same concept. And if we follow the same exact line, after Queen D3, I agree with you. I think this bishop could actually serve as a very powerful attacker.
Right. Now Bishop takes F6, G takes F6, and Queen G6 is a serious threat.
Great point. Yeah, Bishop F6 is a threat, and that essentially forces Knight to 7. And you know what I would do here? I would actually take this opportunity to make some luft and go H3. And this just eliminates such a big headache. And in the event of a trade, White is still up a pawn. White is still better. And White now threatens Rook B6, Rook B8 check. Black's king is really flimsy here. This should be a win for White.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So that's maybe a good opportunity for White to bring this bishop on E5 and threaten the trade of the knight and the bishop, and to go to the end game that White prefers to have.
The time situation is beginning to equalize. Wesley has 29 minutes now. So he judges that this is an important moment. Bishop E5 versus Bishop G3. Those are the two main candidate moves.
Right. After move 40, now we have move 29. Queen E8 was move 29. They have to make 11 more moves until the increment, so 30 minutes, but they don't really struggle for now. I don't think we're going to have here some crazy time trouble and some blunders because of that.
No, it doesn't look like that's where the game is headed for sure. It looks like maybe yeah, both of them might have something like, 10 minutes for the last 5 moves, which is not, it's not a ton of time, but it's also not time pressure.
Yeah, Dania, we talked earlier about Tabatabai. Now let's bring the Wesley So's profile at our screen and talk a little bit about Wesley, and probably you know more details about him too. So he became a grandmaster very early at the age of 14, and he started to play chess the first tournament when he was 9 years old only. So that's a short time from starting to play tournaments, the competition, and then to become a grandmaster.
Yes, so I'm just wrapping my head around grandmaster at 14. I'm like old school. I'm still impressed with GM at 14, much less 12. So Wesley, I mean, how old is he? He's 28 now.
Yes.
So it's crazy to think that he's been a GM for 14 years, over a decade.
Can you imagine? Yes. And he became the 9th youngest GM in the history. So, and he became the youngest player to pass 2600 rating barrier, even breaking the Magnus Carlsen's record. So, yeah, he has achieved a lot of things in the early ages, and he has won a lot of tournaments in USA. He's a couple of times USA champion, and as well as the youth champion in different group categories.
Yeah, Wesley has a incredible tournament resume. He, I talked earlier about his consistency. I still think that people tend to underestimate him. I still think that, you know, he doesn't stream regularly. He keeps a lower profile. He's, you know, he lives quietly. And that's why I think he's such a well-liked figure. He's incredibly modest. He's very classy. You know, he lets his moves do the talking, so to speak. But he is freakishly good and well-rounded in his style, and fantastic opening preparation. He's got the whole package.
Right, Tanya. And for now, he is ranked 6 in the world and having 2778 rating. But back in 2017, his rating was 2822. That's his peak rating, and he was holding that. And he's also the champion of the Fisher Random World Chess Championship.
Wow. So Wesley can do everything. And I'm curious, so is it accurate to say that 3 out of 4 players, everybody except Amin, has been over 2,800? I'm pretty sure Shakhriyar has been over 2,800. Hikaru was, I think, 2,816 at his peak and world number 2. And obviously, you just mentioned Wesley also has been well over 2,800 at his peak.
Yeah,
impressive.
So this shows how strong is this semifinals here, even though that we know both candidates already who will play in June and compete among the other players for the first place, and then the winner of the candidate going to play at the World Championship match. But still, this tournament is very exciting, and also it's exciting because we see Tabatabai, 21-year-old grandmaster who we have not seen for many tournaments, but now he has a chance to shine, and I think he's doing it great. He's already in the semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you make 2,700. Like, you just gotta perform in the key tournaments, because rating wise, doing well in a tournament like this is exactly how you gain 25-30 points at a tournament if you're someone like Amin, which is virtually impossible in an open tournament as a 2,600, and you can take it from me. But in a tournament like this, I mean, if you start beating up on 2750s, you're going to be there yourself before you know it. As we see Wesley deciding to drop the bishop to g3. Yeah, you proposed bishop e5. I actually kind of liked bishop e5 maybe a little bit more, but obviously this doesn't ruin anything, and Wesley keeps a very large objective advantage.
That's right, Dania. Is he going to play after queen c6 to take this rook on c4, d takes on c4, and then bishop e1 to stop the pawn coming forward for a bit?
Okay, you mean Can white take on c4 and then play bishop? Can white take on c4 and play bishop e1?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is a thought. A knight d5 can be met with e4. And a very important detail is that if black tries to shove this pawn through, then after queen c1, yeah, there's nothing black can do. Black has to move the knight away, and then you take the pawn. So in this position, black would have to move the knight back, maybe reroute it to b5. I still think this isn't really Wesley's style to get a position like this, but white is undoubtedly still much better.
Right. Bishop g3 is on the board, and now Tabatabai is taking his time.
Queen c6, queen b5. I don't see much else that he can do.
Right, these two moves. Queen a4 can be also with the same ideas, just to bring the queen close.
Yeah, queen a4 also threatens rook takes c1 and queen takes a5, like queen b5. And again, takes on e4 can be very seriously considered, but I don't know, queen b3, and black has gotten some counterplay.
Yeah, the c4 pawn, queen, they are too scary here to me. Even though there's bishop f4 now and control this square, it's possible. Yeah, bishop e1 even, it's possible, but it still looks a bit scary. You have to play a bit accurate here with white. And by the way, we have queen b5 on the board.
Okay, so he plays perhaps the most natural move of all three, queen b5, threatening rook takes c1, queen takes a5, and asking Wesley the key question: should white take on c4, or do you keep the tension with a move like bishop e1, which would defend against the immediate threat? And that, I think, is more up Wesley's alley, right? A move like bishop e1, maximally flexible and gives the least amount of counterplay, doesn't give the pass pawn to black.
Yeah, I like this move here. Just to guard the pawn and wait for a bit to black to make decision. Then black has to play queen c6 to force this trade on c-file. Otherwise, you can also have some time to play h3. This move is always
oh yeah, always very helpful in such positions.
Yeah, if black is not going queen c6 here after bishop e1, then you can always play h3.
Right. And I would also add that bishop e1 is very helpful from the point of view of making rook takes c4 less dangerous of a proposition. Because anytime black takes back with a pawn, you'll have this queen bishop battery aiming at the c3 square, and you will have time to play e3, e4 in order to cut this knight off from the very important d5 square. So bishop e1 I like a lot here.
Right, Daniel, these games are a bit slow. Do you think it's because they have played already so many games, so many classical games, or it's just because of the semifinals, they just don't want to risk too much, none of the sides?
Yeah, I mean, I do wish we saw some sort of a sharp knight. Or in Hikaru's case, it's definitely his strategy. In Wesley's case, yeah, he doesn't want to get anything crazy. He doesn't want to play to Amin's strengths. And he's done a great job of it. He played something relatively positional, but one can't say that he played a super quiet line. I mean, he played an early f2, f3, and then he tried to get stuff going in the center. But he has completely outplayed Amin in what originally was basically a dynamically equal middle game, which is very impressive.
Yeah. And we had several inaccuracy from Amin's side, and now we can say that the engine gives white the advantage, and white has an extra pawn in long terms. If some pieces have been traded, it's going to be big advantage. For instance, if rooks are off the board, or queens are off the board, or knight and the bishop are off the board, there will be less danger for white, and white can then freely start to activate the pieces. Daniel, we do have here a bit time. I think white will take some time. Why don't we bring another game on the board on the screen, and once again check the key points in that game.
Sure.
What was the most important in the game of Hikaru and Shahrer?
Good idea. So this kind of started off very peacefully, Petrov. And obviously Hikaru, there's many topical lines here. Knight c3 and d4 are the two main ones. And with his next move, Queen e2, Hikaru already signaling his intentions. This is a reputable line, but it leads to a very equal endgame. Queen e7, d3, knight f6, bishop g5, queen trade. And you can see how symmetrical this position is. Hikaru dropping his bishop back to d2, and now c5 by Mamedyarov, bringing on c4 by Hikaru. So a pretty unusual pawn structure. And Kedi, at first, in this position, we thought that if anybody was contending for a slight advantage, it's Mamedyarov with this idea of pushing d5. But after a long think, Hikaru finds this incredibly strong idea. Bishop d1, d5, swinging the bishop around to a4. Then he trades everything on d5 and uses that bishop to ruin Black's queenside pawn structure and sinking his knight onto e5, which in turn compels Mamedyarov to trade his bishop for the knight. There might have been slightly more resilient choices for Black, such as c4. None of them would have substantively changed the evaluation, though. Instead, Mamedyarov essentially forcing a draw with a mass trade. And Kedi, a solid game by both sides. Not much to say, and the rest is pretty obvious.
Yeah, it was only 1 point when we thought that the things will change a little bit this direction of the game when Shak played bishop e6 and threatened d5, as you mentioned. But move like bishop d1, which looks so unnatural, but it's a correct move. And it was found by Hikaru, and seems like none of the side had really any problems or issues here or even better position. So draw seemed here to be quite a logical one. And they also saved some energy for tomorrow's game. Probably they also need some time to prepare the next openings. And meanwhile, Daniel, we do have rooks off the board.
Okay, so Wesley, I was wrong. Wesley does go for this endgame, and I think the reason he goes for it is he figures that Black is just never going to push his pawn to c3. Queen b3 by Amin, and now it's crucial for Wesley to play bishop e1. He's going to play, it's the only move. Otherwise, Black plays c3 and Black wins. So bishop e1 is going to happen here any second. And yeah, Kenny, the pawn's not moving. White has many ways to improve the position. Wesley might finally get a chance to move his pawn to h3, create some luft. Great winning chances here in this endgame for White.
Yeah, Danny, and after bishop e1, this move has to be played to stop the pawn on c3 there. And it's just Wesley's not going to spend here any more minutes for that. And then is that possibility that White can also start to create a pass pawn like d5, e takes d5,
Absolutely.
e takes d5?
Absolutely, he wants to play d5. And, it depends on the situation, of course. But d5, e takes d5, and then even e5 can be considered in certain positions.
Right.
And if Black plays knight d7, I was considering the move d5 here. It does give up the c5 square, though, so you probably don't want to give up too much activity here. Maybe a move like h3 or even h4 to grab some space while you're creating some luft should be played by White before he takes any concrete measures to convert this advantage, I think.
Yeah, Dania, in this position, knight on c6 creates not too much, and it's so hard to find a perfect square for the knight. Tabatabai goes for knight e8 now. He probably wants to bring this knight to d6 and b5 and still try to push the c pawn forward. And now d5 is just a move that just screams.
This looks incredibly strong. Now the difference between this and knight d7, here d5 we already discussed, it gives up the c5 square, right? Knight e8 d5 looks like it may win the game. Now, if Black pushes e5, then White promotes the pawn. There's nothing to talk about here. Black has to take. Now White takes with the queen. Now the king has a couple of squares. If king h7, then there's another check, then another check, and White has Black completely cornered. The computer indicates a very slow move like king f2, getting the king to safety, and then eventually getting the bishop onto a devastating square. Black is totally lost here. And if Black plays king h8, Then there's queen d8, tying black down completely. Sorry, Ketty, you were saying?
King f2 is an amazing move. It's just amazing move. You can play h3 and king h2 to bring this king out to safety, but then you will walk to queen b1 pin, so you don't really want to do that. And you play king f2. d5 is on the board.
Wesley not wasting any unnecessary time. He knows that Amin is collapsing here, and the evaluation is over +4 now. It was +2 before 98, so another inaccuracy by Tabatabai. And this game actually might end a lot sooner than expected. I was expecting this endgame to drag on for a long time, but the way that the game is going, it feels like Wesley can sense that victory is near.
Yeah, and e takes d5 is now on the board. It takes d5 from white side should not be really good, as it allows knights to come on d6. Blockade this pawn and support the c4 pawn. So we have here queen to d5 check, and yeah, white has to be careful here to make the precise move. King h8 is losing. King f8 is probably also losing because bishop can come into the game at some point. We have seen king f2 already. Maybe same ideas here. King f2, king g3, and then bishop f2.
Yeah, or h3, just create some luft, go king h2. Take care of that problem, and white's going to be completely winning. I think the plan for Wesley is very simple. You take care of the king, you tuck it away, whether it's on g3 or on h2, and then your hands are untied. Bishop, f2, c5, bishop g3, everything is winning. I mean, going king h7. So we're going to see this position on the board, I would guess, with queen f5, king g8, and queen e6 check. And the evaluation is already +6. Ketty, after this king f2 move. I wonder though if Wesley, h3 allows queen d1. That's the point. Yeah. Although even here king f2 is winning. Even here it's winning.
There is c3 maybe here. c3 retake this pawn, then queen c2. c2. Yep.
c2 bishop e4 check, knight d6, but now takes, and white is 2 pawns up here for no compensation. This is a pretty straightforwardly winning queen endgame. And look, queen endgames are never that straightforward. No, Wesley should win this within a couple of moves. Well, maybe 10, 15 moves, I would guess.
Yeah, but this one is just 2 connected pass pawns, and white will never have a problem to convert it. Daniel's now knight is a little bit limited. Maybe white can also do is just to stop the c pawn once again coming forward, and then maybe push e5 here, and then to push this pawn as far as possible.
To push e5?
Yeah.
The issue though, no, sorry. I was going to say queen e3 check and bishop f2, queen c1 with mate, but white is king f1. Yeah, that's a thought. That's definitely a thought. I would be inclined to go for checkmate with white, like queen f5, queen e6, and then try to get the bishop to c5. But yeah, the concept of pushing the e-pawn is also a completely valid way of trying to convert the advantage.
Right. Let's see, he's taking some time, and this is a good moment to take some time because he feels that it's king is too exposed. There checks, knight on e8 is not guarded. It can be under some check and double attacks, and yeah, this is very good position. I was thinking, Daniel, how about some moves like if white can make it on the time, queen d4, bishop c3 to stop this pawn forever, and then start to target g7 pawn by checkmate, and knight has to stack here on e8 forever. And it's unfortunately now queen e5 is impossible because queen e3 is a check, but queen d4 can be played.
Yep. Yeah. And then bishop c3, another excellent try, and that gives white time to play h3. So this is a slightly slower approach than queen f5 check, but probably no less effective in terms of procuring a decisive advantage.
Yeah, and which move should be better here, h3 or h4 to create like h5 and g6 outpost there?
Yeah, this is a common like GM thing. Luft, I think a lot of people when they hear the word luft, they just think h3 or h6, but that's not the only way to create luft. And in an endgame where space becomes really important and control over certain squares becomes important, you kind of want to solve 2 problems at the same time. You go h4, And while you're at it, I mean, if you're already doing this, you might as well try to advance this pawn as far as possible in order to clamp down on certain key squares.
It's also possible, yeah. Right, like to move here to 22 minutes for both players. We might see Wesley down to 20 minutes, maybe even less than 20 minutes, but they will not have any problems, Danny, because this is move 35 and it's quite easy to make 5 moves here for whites. Time.
I was expecting 10 minutes for both sides, but they've really accelerated their pace of play, and now they've got 20 minutes. But yeah, Wesley probably going to take some time here. Ketty, I think probably a good time for a short break for us.
Okay, let's take it.
All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Wesley in just a couple of moments.
Welcome back, everyone. This is FIDE Grand Prix 2022 final leg, and we do have semifinals, and we do have the final game now in progress. Wesley So against Amin Tabatabai. And Dania, we do have the same position as we left, but the games has been played and has been repeated. So let's take a look how that happened.
Yeah, so we were observing the position Wesley was up a pawn. He decided to trade rooks and then move e4, preventing knight d5, Amin getting his queen active, Wesley preventing c3. And knight e8 allowed the pawn push, which Wesley exploited immediately. d5, captures, king h7, queen f5, king g8. And now there's this very tempting queen e6 check move. After king f8, Ketty, white has to find the best move here is a very difficult move to play, which is king f2. The idea is the same as with h3, to tuck the king away on a secure square, but it's just a hard type of move to play, I guess. Queen b2 checking g3, and if c3, there's a very important detail. There's the move queen c4. And if black plays c2, bishop b4 check forces black to give away an entire queen to prevent checkmate.
Right, Dania, Wesley's taking a lot of time. I remember that we said that they both had 21 minutes at this position with queen d5. Now they repeated the moves. They're closer to the time increment. 37 moves has been played, but this time that Wesley shows here and spent here in this position might says that he cannot see this king f2 fancy and strong move.
Yeah, well, I mean, if anybody can see it, it's likely to be Wesley. Now, that's not the only winning line. It might be the best and the most convincing, but a move such as h4 we were discussing during the break. Actually, wait a minute. There was Bick made a proposal during the break, which is that after king f8, what if white goes h4 now? But the problem is black doesn't give this check because of bishop f2. Rather, black goes queen d1 and meets king f2 with c3 maybe. Oh, no, we looked at this line. That's the line, c3, queen c4, c2, bishop b4, knight d6, bishop d6, queen d6, queen c2. This is quite forced, and this endgame should be winning for white with 2 extra pawns.
Right, so h4 is there also a move, queen e6 is also a move, king f2 is also a move that can be played. There are plenty of moves, but Dani, do you think that Wesley can repeat here the position?
Well, is he going to go queen f5 again? Yeah, it's likely that he does. I mean, the alternative is to go h4 in this position, for instance, which I haven't gotten to yet, but yeah, this is also winning. And at some point, you're going to have to play king f2. King f2 is a move that you play in response to almost virtually any move that black plays on the first rank.
Right. 10 minutes for Wesley. He is thinking he's deep in his calculation right now. And he has plenty of choices here. Queen f5, queen f5. h3, h4 is also a possibility. He has to find the precise move in here. There's also queen d4. We were talking about this earlier, Tanya, before we.
Oh yeah, yeah. Queen d4 is definitely a move, but it allows black's knight to get active. Knight c7, knight. Okay, active in quotes, but it's something. Knight c7, knight e6, and I feel like you abandon the concept of giving a check on f5. Bishop c3, no, bishop c3, knight e6, queen e5, still winning for white for sure, but maybe not the most convincing.
Yeah, if you give a check queen d1, king goes on f2, and then king hides on g3. And
always,
there's some threats that you can give a check on f5 and take the knight on e6. So
yeah, this idea of king f2, king g3 is crucial. Without it, there would be so much more. White would have to go h3, but it exists. So
right, down to 9 minutes. Time is ticking.
Yeah, Wesley's got to move. He's got to think about moving here. He's got 3 moves to make. But you know what he's doing is he's planning out the next two moves as well. It's not like he's going to make a move and just make a move in a vacuum. If he's going to play queen f5, that's likely going to mean that he plays queen e6. So he's not just calculating the next move, he's calculating the entire sequence up until move 40.
Yeah, Danny, what happens after queen f5 check, king g8, queen e6? We saw king f8, and how about just to take a6 pawn? And White also claims that I also have a pass pawn here on a file.
But now there's a perpetual, I think. I think if the queen abandons the king too much, there's queen e3 check, queen d3 check. And if you try to escape, I'll give another check and then another check. And I think the only way to escape the checks here is to play f4, but that drops the e4 pawn. And that is definitely not a pawn that you want to lose.
True.
So
now bishop b4 check is not that strong anymore. So yeah,
right.
a6 pawn for now is not very important. Indeed.
And
Okay.
Wesley
Can't
down
wait
to 8
see
minutes.
the move from Wesley.
Yeah, this better be good. I mean, he spent right around 15 minutes on figuring out what the best conversion is, and I'm excited to see what he's come up with.
Yeah. Have you ever had a position where your opponent thought so much that he flagged himself out of nowhere?
One time I played this guy, very eccentric individual at my local club, and I was 1800, he was like 1500, and he was playing an amazing game, but he was taking like unbelievable amounts of time on every move. And at some point he had 3 minutes left for the rest of the game in a super complicated middle game. And I'm like, there's no way that he's getting his moves in. And he literally sat for the entire 3 minutes. It was like the guy was totally oblivious to his clock. I've never seen anything like that. And when he lost on time and I pointed it out, he's just like, oh, you know, as if, you know, it was ridiculous. That comes to mind. And then I've had a couple of games where my opponent lost on time. I have never, to my knowledge, lost on time in a game. Have you ever flagged in an over the board
No, I've
game?
never flagged myself unless it's blitz game or
Right.
rapid championship. Then you don't have much of the time. But the classical chess, I've never flagged myself. But I had also a very similar situation when my opponent had like 3 minutes or even 5 minutes, and she was thinking so much that at some point it was flagged, and I was thinking like, should I just let her know or let her think more, because she's not going to make any move next 10 minutes.
It was not even close. Like, it wasn't like she was trying to move and didn't make the move. 6 minutes for Wesley now. We're counting down the seconds. He needs to move. Hello, wake up. Hello, Wesley.
There was one tournament, World Championship, back in 2002 or 3. We had a very big delegation from Georgia, and we had a lot of world champions, including Zveri Zorye, now he's playing in USA, and Naroditsky and many more. So we were a very strong delegation, but for many of the events, we were just arriving at the tournament the last second. Like we were arriving and rushing to the tournament. And we had one player who fell asleep during the game. Yeah, she put the hands on the head. This is the natural pose for chess player to think, and she was so tired.
Right. No, this I like to do this, pretending I'm thinking, but in reality, you're just like, it wasn't good. And then I've mastered all these tricks because in college, I would often stay up all night playing Blitz, and then I had a lecture at 9 a.m. the next day. So I mastered what I would do is I would go like this, and I would have a pen in my hands. And when a professor would look at me, I'd open my eyes and I just start nodding my head vigorously. Yep, pretending to write something. And then I go right back to keeping my head down. Queen f5 played, by the way, by Wesley. So he might be going down the queen e6 line.
Now he has to. Danny, if he plays Queen D5 now, there will be 3 times repetition there.
Yeah, do not play Queen D. Now, is that something I think I've asked you that before. I did that once. I accidentally repeated 3 times in a completely winning position. Have you ever done that?
Oh, yes. And it was so strange. I did not notice it. No one noticed it, not my opponent. I was winning. It was close position. I was attacking on the king side, also on the queen side. The center was closed. It was like pawn chain everywhere, both sides. And when I came in the room, I started to analyze the game with my computer. And at some point, it's like +4. And it says 0, 0, 0, because it was 3 times repetition position, which has been played earlier, like 10 moves earlier. Then I tried to move around and go again there. And it was quite hard to spot it. You know, no one really spotted. I thought I was still winning, but the position happened just repeated for 3 times. And it was really weird experience. Yeah, I would be very disappointed if my opponent could just catch that moment and ask the arbiter for a draw. Arbiter could check it and just fix it a draw. It could be just horrible for me. I was winning, and it was clearly that I was winning the position.
Right. It's a really interesting rule. I think it's a good rule. The 3-time repetition rules is very elegant, right? It allows you to make a draw in an elegant kind of way. As Wesley has gone down the Queen E6 line, he has 1 more move to make and 3.5 minutes to do it. And King F2, if he finds that move, I have a feeling that he might play it, because once you get this position, you don't have much else to do. Black threatens a nasty little check on E3, right? White can't play Bishop F2 because that walks into mate. H3 we considered, and we thought that after Queen D1, Black gets unnecessary counterplay. Wesley does go H4, so he does go for that line. And I think we're going to see this on the board. Queen D1, King F2, C3, Queen C4. And this is still winning, Ketty. That's the Queen endgame line.
Wow, C2 and Bishop before the important check line there. Wow.
So we might see this endgame on the board. Queen endgame, 2 pawns up. This should be a pretty straightforward win for Wesley, though. I think he's going down this path.
Yeah, H4 is now on the board.
Yeah, no,
there is not much of the options for Black too. There is a check on E3, Tanya, but after Bishop F2, you are running out from the checks. Queen E3, Bishop F2, Queen C1, King H2, Queen F4, and Bishop G3. That's the final check.
And then A6 falls or C4 falls and it's over. Yeah, just quit. Oh, no. Queen takes A6. And okay, C3, but with the knight being so out of the game, I mean, even Queen C8, C2, and A6, and we might get simultaneous promotion. Even A7 at a bare minimum is winning. Queen, trade, Queen, you're up 2 pawns, easy win. Easy clap.
Yeah, and there's also some ways to stop this pawn on C5 in this. H4 has been played. Actually, H4 is more natural move than King F2. King F2 is just stepping on this square that Bishop controls. It's a bit funny looking move.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we'll play pretty quickly here. There isn't much to think about. He is so paralyzed that Queen D1 is really the only feasible move in the position. He might also resign in that Queen endgame. I mean, it's so depressing to have something like that against Wesley that this game may be ending very soon.
Right, and what happens if Black just brings this knight back on F6 and tries to hold?
I think I'm just going to munch. Okay,
now C3 will be met by Queen C8 check, and it will be double attack.
Going for Queen D1, Wesley will quickly respond with King F2. And no, this is. I mean, I don't like to say the word. I don't like to use the word over in general, but for all intents and purposes, this is over. But let's see Wesley's technique. It's still really interesting to see how he converts these winning positions. I mean, if you're interested in, anybody who's interested in mastering technique and improving their conversion skills should watch Wesley's conversions.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I don't think Tabatabai will resign right away, maybe after some moves, like 10 moves, but it's so hard to resign when you have still queens on the board. There are so many checks, and queen endgame is the longest endgames that can happen. It's like 100 moves, and you will lose anyway in the end. That's the hardest part of the queen endgame.
Yeah, it is. And you always looking for perpetuals. You're looking for checks. King f2 played by Mr. So. And with 2 pawns down, queen d4 check. No, but this, I think, loses even faster after king g3. So king g3, and if you play c3, Getty, then the bishop f2 is a very strong move here. Because
c5 is coming.
I feel like I said that in the Kasparov thing. Because, c2, queen b4, queen d5, and unstoppable threat of bishop c5 check. This is totally winning position. Yes. Queen d6 check, it takes bishop c5. And black, should resign here after c2, and it takes and bishop a3, and white wins, yes? Kelly, I'm going to abandon you for 15 to 30 seconds.
Yeah, you know what you should not do, Dania. You know which player you should not imitate. You know what is my knockdown, so don't do that.
Oh, okay. I know. I'll think about it. I need to run to the restroom. I'm going to leave you for 20 seconds here. I will be right back. But c3 has been played, and it looks like bishop f2 basically ends the game. All right, Ketty, I'll let you drive for 15 seconds.
Okay, so here we have 2 games, 2 final games at the semifinals, and Hikaru Nakamura has not only qualified to the finals but also qualified to the Candidates Tournament 2022. Who would think that he would come after 2 years of not playing classical chess and win the first Grand Prix, and now being in the semifinals and guarantee the spot at the Candidates Tournament? And then we have Richard Report also guaranteed himself with 20 points of the Grand Prix. And now we do have this game going on. We can take a look at the prize fund and check out what these players are playing for, as already the main prize, the seat at the Candidates Tournament, is taken. But now at this event, the winner will get 24,000 euro and runner-up will get 18,000 euro. And this is a really good money. All these players, 4 players, has guaranteed already 12,000 euros as they are semi-finalists. And the other prizes are down there on the screen. All the players will get some amount of the money just to play at the Grand Prix. So quite nice tournament.
Okay, Chad, I washed my hands. Who do you think I am? Come on. Give me a break.
Letting us know. We were suspicious with that.
No, I mean, I take all precautions. So bishop f2 ends the game immediately. Bishop f2 is played. This game will not last more than another 3 minutes because the threat of bishop c5 is unstoppable, as they say in French. Queen b4, queen d5, and you cannot stop bishop c5, which wins the game. Yeah, bishop f2, and yes, it's over. The game's over after bishop f2.
Yeah, bishop to f5. This is the move that he will find. There is another move, queen c6, to stop the pawn, but that allows some more checks on the board. Queen e5, queen d4, then.
The other
quite unnecessary.
Queen b3 wins also. Queen d6 check, king h3, queen. No. First boat says gambit of the day. Maybe this is not a bad attempt, queen e6 check. It's like those blitz games where you do something like this and the opponent has pre-moved king h2.
Right.
Check.
It was this kind of funny move we had at the Grand Prix, Dania.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Hare Krishna who made this move?
A move like that?
some silly move. There was some silly move in the end.
Yeah, it's funny because I was playing a blitz game. And by the way, ignore Wesley. The clock will update. Wesley has made move 40, so another 30 minutes will be tacked onto his clock. I remember, sorry, Katie, go ahead.
No. You remembered something.
I remember a game. So when I was like 8 years old, I didn't know how analog clocks worked, because I was already used to digital clocks. So I was playing a game in the Mechanics Institute. I have tons of stories from the Mechanics for my time there. And I was playing an old guy who was 1600. I was maybe 1300 or 1400. And I was playing this lawyer who I hated. This guy, his name was Julian. I hated playing Julian because he was really good at 1600, super solid. He beat me like 5 times. But this one time I'm playing him, the time control in the club games was it was an hour and a half for 30 moves and then another 30 minutes. So we made move 30, but I recorded it wrong on my score sheet. So on my score sheet, it was only move 29. And his clock, his flag fell on the analog clock that we were using. And I was so excited. I like jumped up to find John Donaldson, the arbiter, to tell him that Julian had lost on time. And then, of course, my dad was there, and he comes over and he says, "Do you realize that he's made move 30? You just like wrote it. You just skipped a move." Oh, and of course, I was completely lost too. I was just excited that I went on time, and I didn't actually went on time.
Oh no.
The lesson is keep the score sheet neat, and that way you won't have those false alarms and false hopes.
I think there was Ivanchuk who recorded wrongly in the score sheets, and he lost some time. I think it was Ivanchuk one time.
Okay.
And
okay, I tried to somehow to get recorded correctly, but said I realized that I have the wrong. Okay, of course, I realized immediately how to play. But okay, typical, yeah.
Oh my god, that's exactly like Ivanchuk 1-1. I don't know how you're doing this, but I told you earlier, Tanya, that I had this problem here, that my wisdom teeth was hurting, and now you're making me so much laugh. It's back.
The pain is I'm making you open your reignite the pain. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No, yeah, so this chat makes actually fun of your statement that 1600 solid player that you made, you said, but at some point 1600 player, it's quite solid, especially when
I'm sure that the chat likes to laugh at 1600. I'm pretty sure the average rating though is a little bit below 1600. 1600s are good, and this is why I tell people not to. When you start playing chess, I think nowadays everybody, wants to become a GM straight away. 1600s are pretty darn good. And as a 1600, you will beat 99.999% of people who play chess. So, reasonable goals, and 1800s is a very high rating in the grand scheme of things, comparatively speaking, as Wesley has played Bishop F2. He is not missing an opportunity to deliver the hammer blow.
Wow, Bishop F2 is now on the board. Dani, I have to admit that my grandmom, who just loves to play chess, and she's a big fan of chess and chess players, never been a professional chess player, just it was always her hobby. She is a 1600 player, and I should say that she's very strong, and I'm having difficulties to beat her in every game. She's very strong, and the rating is just a number in many people's cases.
And she probably appreciates the chance to play you, so she's trying hard.
We're not playing nowadays, but she plays on chess.com. A few years ago,
Okay.
I registered account for her, and
Nice.
she's 80 years old, and she has a brother who is 83 years old, and then she registered account for her brother, so they're playing together every day for hours and hours, and everyone in the family complains about this of their addiction.
Right. Well, the best kind of addiction. The blitz. Well, yeah, I actually don't like playing relatives very much. This one time, some family friends came over, and one of them was like, I heard you're a great chess player. Can we play a game? And I said, sure. And I was maybe like a master at that point. This was many, many years ago. But he turned out to be really, really good. He was like 1900, and I was losing. And I think I pulled out a draw, but I hate how like some of my relatives do this. They pretend that they don't play.
Yes.
And when they say they don't play, that means they're like 1800.
Oh, yes. That's exactly is how my grandma's brother is. He beat me so many times when I was a junior. And then later he was just offering me a draw in a losing position when I had losing position. So because my grandma was very mad at me. Oh, we had the end of the game.
You simply resigned, and this is not a premature resignation. We have highlighted the lines that win the game. Queen d6 check, takes, bishop c5, and the bishop is in time to take the knight with check and return to stop the pawn. And so Amin saw no use in continuing the game. What a smooth victory by Wesley So. Not Amin's best game. He made a lot of mistakes in the middle game, but it's understandable. You're playing against a beast, and Wesley with an excellent victory in the first game of the semifinals, Ketty.
Wow, that is very important win, Dania, for Wesley, as he will come tomorrow with black pieces, where he gonna need only 2 results, not only 1 result. Let's take a look at the bracket here. So here we have draw in the first game and Wesley being a leader in this second match. And in tomorrow they will switch the colors, and we're gonna have another classical chess happening tomorrow. So I'm very much excited, and Tanya, I'm very happy to see this game by Wesley today. He totally outplayed Tabatabai. It was nicely played by Wesley So.
No, that was a vintage Wesley So win. Like he puts together some great opening preparation. He gets an unfamiliar position for Amin, who reacts well initially, but in a couple of key moments just didn't hold the tension properly. He took that knight on c3 when he could have kept his bishop on b4, and then a little bit later on, having slipped into a slightly worse position, he exacerbated the problem by inviting Wesley's bishop to g3. So a classic Wesley win, and Amin has his work cut out for him tomorrow. He's going to have to win, but he's going to have the white pieces. So, the way he's been playing this tournament, I wouldn't count him out. We'll see.
Yeah. That's another chance for Amin. I'm sure he will find some way to fight it back, as he really needs. If not, then Wesley has to hold the position, or maybe he's not even going to make a draw and he will fight back. But the other game, Shahir Mammadira with white pieces against Hikaru Nakamura, that's going to be also a very interesting match. And thanks a lot, Dania, for joining me for this tournament. We don't have much of the games. We have just few games, and we don't have moves coming that much and that fast as before, but I hope that you liked it and you enjoyed these games, and thank you so much for being here, and thanks to our chat on YouTube and Twitch as well. And final words to you.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to remind everybody, first of all, that Arena Kings is going on with $45,000 in prizes. And that's every Wednesday. So that will be happening today. So don't miss Arena Kings. We've got tons of great streamers playing. Okay. And other than that, Kitty, this was an absolute pleasure. As I said at the start, I've got big shoes to fill. But this was a very fun round. Yeah, 2 games is not a lot, but on the other hand, we get to watch every move. We get to really dissect what's going on, and we get to enjoy these great players. I had a great time. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's round as well, Ketty. So thank you to everybody.
Bye.
It's game 6, it's day 6 for the 2021 FIDE World Chess Championship. What will the world champion do with his third chance with the white pieces?
He's not recalling. He's
studying.
He's studying.
I like that.
And that's important because Magnus caught him off guard. He's trying to figure out this position. And just because he didn't take the pawn and he didn't develop, doesn't mean that the rest of the game is easy for him.
Like, from the way he's acting, his body language, and the fact that he was playing very rapidly, and now he's stopping to think, it looks like knight c6 was a bit of a surprise, but I don't understand how it can be a surprise.
I don't know. The way he's played this game so far.
This really has been the most impressive game Jan has played.
Magnus moves the queen up. Game on, ladies and gentlemen. We have action in game 6, not bishop b4.
What did they have in mind? It was bishop b4 was such a natural move. I'm kind of puzzled.
Jan is trying to keep this confusing for Magnus with these moves. Wait, what just happened? Wait,
e4.
Knight f4. Oh, nice e5.
Oh, no, this could be trouble.
Jan is blowing this position here with no time now.
Well, like queen b4, it worked.
Look, knight e4. Because if you take the knight, you lose the bishop.
Magnus Carlsen has reached time control. Jan Nepomniachtchi has one more move to make or he loses on time.
Queen b3.
Oh my gosh.
Jan is defending this endgame.
Jan is defending this endgame incredibly well. I think that this is, frankly, if Jan holds this, it might be as telling in regards to what we'll be talking about in the World Championship as anything else, because this is the test. We have broken history here in the 2021 World Chess Championship because the move rook to d2 officially makes this game the longest game in World Chess Championship history.
Black has to be careful.
This is going to be so hard for Jan to hold because he's just going to keep pushing this.
I think that's just winning because you can no longer check that king anymore.
I expect Jan Nepomniachtchi to throw in the towel in this position.
That's the way it is. As I said, it shouldn't be easy in a World Championship match. You have to try for every chance, no matter how small it is.